Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, joined by Matt Bertz at the end of the table.
How you doing?
Real good. We got Elise Favis.
Hey.
Welcome home. And then Andrew Reiner.
Hi, Ben Hanson.
We got a hell of a show.
Really?
Just the best.
Why? We haven't even done it yet.
Oh, man. Technically, I've done half of it. Because at the tail end of this show, jumping right to it, we're talking to the creative director for all of Team 17, who is the studio behind Worms.
Is it 17 people?
It is 17 people working over there for so long. Fun fact, Team 17 started and its name was 17-bit as a play off 16-bit, and now there's another indie studio making like Galaxy called 17-bit. We get into all that stuff.
Okay.
So Kevin Carthew is who we talked to at the end of the show. Worms WMD just came out, so talked to him about how the hell you keep the Worms franchise going for so long.
Yeah, it just doesn't stop.
It never
It's
stops.
like the cockroach of the game. No, it's cockroaches probably have less value than Team 17 and Worms, but
yeah. I love the Worms games. It's one of those, I am so nostalgic over Armageddon, and then you pop your head in every once in a while and be like, this one's okay. Worms WMD, which came out on Tuesday, it seems like a good one. It seems like the best in a long time. And I was reading like Steam reviews, and there's a bunch of people like, I've played every Worms game. They finally did it. They're finally living up to the legacy.
Just real quick, did you name your worms?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What was your go-to?
I'd probably just do like pets or something. I don't know. This
That's
is back when I was
That's
like
weak.
12. What did
Okay.
you name him after? Anakin?
Yeah, all the Star Wars characters.
Of course, yeah. It's good
Cool stuff.
So we talk about like the nostalgia over Worms Armageddon, the physics of the ninja rope, which you could talk about for hours apparently. Worms as esports.
It's gonna be a long podcast.
Oh man, it's real good stuff. But before we get to all the good Team 17 Worm stuff, we're talking about Deus Ex, Mankind Divided.
That's me.
That's you and everybody else a little bit. Jump
Okay.
in here and there. Titanfall 2, Matt Bertz has been playing a lot of it.
yeah.
Awesome. And then Elise, you just got back from Germany.
Yeah, I was there for Gamescom.
Yeah, so you played a lot of games that are on the horizon that we're going to talk about, all your different hands-on experience. I see a page of notes over there.
Yeah.
They both brought. What am I doing?
Yeah,
You got to
Reiner.
bring the John Stewart.
You know, I
Yeah.
it's just because like I had like 5 appointments a day at Gamescom. Like I had so many different games I was playing, and I was just like, I don't want each experience to like go into the other and like get all mixed up in my head. So I'm like, no, I'm coming here with
You don't want
notes.
South Park jokes bleeding into ReCore. It really
yeah,
doesn't
you
work
know,
well.
like those games are so similar. So
Perfect. We'll get to all that stuff. Out of the gate, Reiner.
Yeah.
Biggest release probably this week, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided.
There was another game
Going into the
called
week.
Madden, maybe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're going to talk about Madden too. Damn it, I always forget about that. Mankind Divided. What did you think of this?
I thought it was okay. It's
All
and it. I guess coming off of Human Revolution, the precursor to this one, I gave that an 8.5. Really liked that game. Thought they kind of nailed that blend of stealth and action and the hacking kind of cyberpunky stuff.
It's almost as if we talked about that game for like 4 hours on this podcast recently. Yeah.
People are probably rolling their eyes like, enough with that game.
Yeah.
But this one picks up 2 years after that, and they kind of picked an ending. Like the end of Human Revolution, you kind of had a say in dictating what happened to the world and all that
My
stuff.
suicide Jensen is not going to carry forward into Mankind Divided.
No.
apparently. Okay.
So they picked an ending. This is canon. This is our path. And the world is really kind of at a tipping point between humans and augs, people that are, augment their bodies. And I guess they call them naturals and augs are the two things.
Nats
they
and
do.
Ogs, got it.
But they kind of hone in on like today's political climate and the state of our society and some hot button issues there, and really kind of use that to kind of frame their world and what's going on. A very police state, a lot of corruption, police making mistakes. You also have terrorists, extremist groups really lashing out, segregation, all that stuff comes into play here. But there's also a story going on. Adam Jensen's story is continuing, and this world is continuing, but it kind of gets muddied along the way with all these different things going on.
Muddied in an interesting way?
No, I think they overthought it. I think they put way too much in it, too many factions, too many acronyms, too many things to follow. I had a notebook of just different things written down. And it was kind of funny because we were recording the test chamber, a video we did of the beginning of the game, and Wade Wojcik, who's a big fan of this, was really into it at the beginning, and you can listen to it, and he's like, yeah, and then all of a sudden it starts to get muddy, and he's kind of like, wait, what's happening? Like, who are these guys? And it happens very early in the game where they just overload you. They kind of treat you like a hard drive a little bit, and just data dumps of lore, it's coming in like you wouldn't believe, just shoveling it into your brain.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to digest, and at the same time, it's like the game kind of slows down at that point too, the gameplay. which again picks up on a really interesting note. Jensen's in Dubai. He's on assignment tracking down an arms dealer.
You'll never guess. They're in Dubai, but there's a sandstorm coming, folks.
There is
brand new territory
I've seen
for
that
games.
before.
Yeah.
That does happen. But he's there tracking down an arms dealer in this unfinished high-rise hotel, which is really cool looking. It's stunning. But the mission is great because the design really embraces the stealth out of the gate, and they kind of lead you down this path. Like, you got to be stealthful here. They tell you, like, you can play the game without, like, killing anyone if you want.
You get your choice in the beginning if you want long range, short range, lethal, non-lethal again.
All that stuff, like, again, just Deus Ex at its core, letting you play the game the way you want to. But they do something interesting in this mission where they kind of put a timer on an event. And this event, if you finish it in time or not, is optional. That's a big choice. But by putting the timer on there, I started the game playing it stealthy, slow, methodical, not wanting to kill anyone. And then I felt like right there in that story moment, I had to shift gears and run and gun to reach my objective in time. So I played it through both ways in that instance to see what happened. And I wanted the one where I had to run and do it.
Okay.
So right there, I was like, wow, that is really cool. They just kind of threw me off my game, made me switch gears. I don't know how I'm going to play the game moving forward. But again, as the lore starts getting heaped on you, the missions also just kind of drag out. They don't have a lot of, what would you say, like navigation dynamics that the series has really kind of been about, allowing you to kind of pick your way through these environments. It felt very plain and by the numbers and just picking off pockets of enemies. Yes, I could go into side rooms, but it wasn't necessarily to find new paths. It was just kind of added lore or loot that I could pick up. So I always felt like I was kind of doing these same paths through these environments, and I would even try to change it up, but it all kind of led to the same point. So
Elise, you've been playing this too. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially for the Dubai mission, it does feel really linear, but I think that's also because it's supposed to be the tutorial mission, and it's like really, really early on in the game that you do that. But I've played a couple other portions, like the Golem City portion with the Talus Rucker infiltration thing. I played that, and how would you explain that? You go into this extremist group's headquarters, I guess, and you're infiltrating there, and you have to go and take this guy out. Rather like arrest him and bring him with you. And as you're going through there, I found it was really cool that there was like several different approaches to paths to your objective. Like you could go through the vents, or
there's always the vents in Deus Ex.
always
go for
the vents and always the elevators.
Lots of vents. The Adventures of Vent Man. It could very well be if you're playing that approach.
Do you have to be under a certain height to cosplay as Adam Jensen? So you can
but
fit,
like what was interesting in this level though was there was really a focus on verticality. Like there were several different levels that you could go, and I really enjoyed that level.
So a couple standout missions.
There was a couple, yeah. I pointed them out in my review. There's a vault mission that's very cool, and then there's like a party where they really kind of play with the dynamics in that one. But I felt a lot of them were just kind of plain Jane, and the AI, holy cow, I don't know what happened there. But it's like if she ducked down, you probably wouldn't know she was there if you're a Deus Ex
the AI
enemy.
isn't the strongest, and it's also not the hardest Deus Ex game out there, especially considering I remember the first time I played the original game, like it took me a long time to just get through that first portion of the game. Like it was tough.
I died hundreds of times in Human Revolution.
No, in Human Revolution too. Like, I mean, I think it's because they really tried to do a balance of action and stealth this time. And don't get me wrong, the action's really fun, but it's just not as tough.
Yeah, the shooting mechanics are much improved, and it just out of the gate, jumping into this one, it's really fun to go directly from Human Revolution to see like this upgrade and graphics and everything like that.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful game.
Yeah, it's good looking. But it's really nice that they start you out with the key powers, the key practice upgrades from the last game. But I'm wondering if it's going to be overwhelming for people that are starting out, just suddenly be like, I can turn invisible and I can do all these things. I can bust through a wall and I can throw heavy objects. It's like, it is a lot to start out with, but you have to do it. Otherwise, the way you get accustomed to playing by the end of Human Revolution, it would just feel terrible if you got Metroided at the beginning.
Sure.
You know?
But where I saw that, like the missions, I felt like I was kind of doing the same thing. Or you're saying like going through the vents and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It all kind of led to the same thing, though. It's like I might skip a room or two, but I never felt like I really had a unique path for either way. It was all kind of blended together into this one. And I always just ended up taking the easiest path at that point, just because it's like the enemies just allow that. Like they really just let you kind of breeze through these levels. And then the hub worlds, though, I thought they did a really good job with those, and they're very open. I love that they don't hold your hand to, like, they tell you got to go reach this guy, this AUG guy, right at the beginning of the game, and then they don't tell you how to do it, and you're following the waypoint, and there's the guy blocking, like, you can't come this way, and you're like, well, how do I get in there?
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time exploring the city, just figuring
What is
that
the
out.
city?
Prague.
Prague is the first one you're in. There's a bunch of different hubs. I won't go into those. There's a lot of surprises.
But that's the first one, yeah. And it's not huge, but like there is a lot to do and there's a lot to explore. Like I remember just going on random ledges and stuff and finding an open window, and then suddenly I'd find an apartment and it would have like its own little story to it. You know, like there'd be blood or something and it's like, oh, there was a murder that happened here, and then, you know, reading emails and stuff, and
So
then
many
it's like
emails.
this whole, yeah, of course emails are back. Yeah, it's cool. It's I like the little micro narratives, and there's definitely more of a focus on observational storytelling.
Huh. Yeah, I really loved in Human Revolution, at least, kind of the gray areas of all the spaces where it's like you can have your gun out if you want. You don't really know who's going to be bad. They'll react to you differently. It's completely up to you. And it's like, it's not that clear delineation like in Uncharted or something where it's like, this is a combat space. This isn't,
right.
You know?
But there's a lot of side missions. You're talking about the little micro narratives, but there's also these kind of blue missions on the map that are significant side missions, and they're meaty. There's some big stuff going on in those that's kind of fun to follow. I kind of enjoyed some of those more than the main game itself, but they kind of strip away all that freedom at one point in the hub worlds, and that kind of goes into the police state and all that. And the hub worlds at one point become, this is a bit of a spoiler, you got to use stealth to go through them. And I got so bored with that and just kind of like frustrated with that. Like they're small hub worlds, but they're pretty big stealth spaces, right? To be able to sneak behind boxes. It would take forever to get across. I found with his regenerating health, you could just sprint down the streets and guys are just shooting at you. You're just like, nah, don't care. And I was like,
Hog
okay.
lives rule.
I was like, all right, I got to try this like on the harder difficulty too. It's just still, he got through there just a little bit less health. And then they lose track of you so
That's a
fast because
bummer.
they're idiots. And it's just like, you're just standing there like in the middle of the street and you could see them patrolling like up the hill. And it's just like, okay, I'm just going to heal up and I'm on my way.
Do they at least have more than 3 things to say? Like in Human Revolution, the AI was terrible, and also they would have like 3 barks that they just shout again and again and again.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really hear a lot.
Okay.
I mean, there would be big conversations where there'd be 2 guys standing with each other for a while, and you're just like, okay, when do I spring here? Like, one of them's going to turn. Which way are they going to go? And I like the fake outs they do where they go on their patrolling path, and they'll be walking, and then they'll kind of turn around, you know, and you're like, okay, and they know they're tricking you in that instance where you leap out as soon as they turn around and then they turn.
Sure.
I like those little fake outs. They do a good job with that kind of stuff, but just the patrolling AI is pretty lousy and makes it's a game that you can easily exploit. And you don't want to, you want to have that tense stealth experience, but when you could just go, they see you behind one block and you could just go the block over and hide behind that one and they won't explore that one. And they'll just like look at the one block and go, all clear.
Right.
It's like, you're terrible at your job. So it's okay as a whole. Like you said, the combat is fun. The stealth is really fun. I really like the stealth. The story is really dense and meaty. And
Isn't that a good thing for some people? Like if you're really into like Human
honestly,
Revolution lore.
I'm
guess.
really into Deus Ex lore in general.
Okay.
So like for me, so far I'm not having too much trouble like figuring out what's going on, but
you're
I think
still early. Yeah.
okay, so maybe it does get a lot meatier, but
Yeah, it goes places. There's a lot of shady stuff going on in this world.
Does it connect more to the first Deus
well,
Ex?
there are a lot of different groups to keep track of, right? There's like hacktivists called the Juggernaut Collective.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you smirking over
Activist is
there?
a dumb word. I'm sure it's in Watch Dogs too,
Alex,
plenty,
your
which we're
friend,
used to, but
one of your friends from the game, Alex, is from that.
Yeah.
You're from Interpol.
Task Force 29 is
that's yours.
Interpol, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch.
boy,
the
that
Ark,
McCready's up to no
which
good.
is
I don't want to go into too many of them.
yeah,
But yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There's
anyway, there's
bunch-
a lot of different ones.
Just different organizations
track
floating
of.
around. Is it a continuation of a lot of themes that started in Human Revolution? Does it feel like
Well,
it's
yeah.
a fresh start?
No,
Well,
it
I
feels
mean-
like a continuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was mention of the Illuminati in Human Revolution,
Yeah.
and that's brought up again. And then that's kind of like one of Jensen's main targets is like figuring out what the Illuminati is doing.
Okay. What about Megan? Is she in this? His old ex-girlfriend?
So far, she's brought up. I don't know if I should say more than that.
Okay. She's been vaguely mentioned. Is she a big part of the story, Reiner?
I don't want to bring stuff up. You might see some gold shirts. You might see some stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Gold shirts. No, one thing I noticed when I came into your office and watched it, the HUD is super busy, like Watch Dogs level busy.
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of
is that
stuff going on.
distracting? Can you turn some of that off, or do you want to?
No, but you eventually kind of figure it all out, and it just kind of becomes is there when you need it. You're not really paying attention to it.
That's just how OGs view the world.
Yeah, it's just when you put those
You can
shades
turn
on.
some of those off, no?
I'm not sure, but it
I'm
didn't
pretty sure you
bother me
can.
at all. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a dense game. They mapped the bejesus out of that controller. They used every part of that buffalo. Like, it is unbelievable.
There's
So,
a
like,
lot. Yeah.
It's so much. Like, to pull up your inventory, you have to like hold in on the right stick, and then you have to hold in on left to use cover. It's different controls. You can set it to the same controls as Human Revolution, I guess. But
You can, and it's cool. I like the fact that it still kind of switches between first and third person for cover, and then just general, walking around. Because I don't know, I always liked that. I thought it was a neat touch that you don't see very often.
it's a little bit less janky than the way they did it in Human Revolution. It was a lot of just weird jump cuts between first and third before.
Sure, yeah.
But in exploring a lot of those kind of difficult subject matters, I think they did a really good job with that. They're not going to offend anyone. I think they deliver a message. I think they did some decent stuff. Their marketing teams might
right.
might have a different say in that. But yeah, I thought they did a really good job with that. But when I launched my review, I gave it a 7. I'm on the lower spectrum of a lot of critics. But then I started looking at the reviews, and there's like The Verge was like, I like it, but I don't understand it. And I'm like looking at all these reviews, and they're all picking the lore apart. Like, I don't know what's happening. I can't understand. There's just too much going on here. So that seemed like a pretty common complaint throughout.
And you care more about story maybe than other people playing
Yeah,
it?
well, it's just like I'm in this game world for so long, and Jensen is just boring the crap out of me. Like, he is so dry.
That I can so agree with. Like, honestly, I guess I feel like with Deus Ex, they've always wanted to. It's supposed to be like an avatar in a way, like you're supposed to have that choice of like how you want to express yourself and stuff. Even with JC Denton and stuff, and then looking at Adam Jensen, they're trying to do that same kind of thing, but like it's weird because you're not customizing that character at all. Yeah. Like, Adam Jensen is supposed to be an established character.
Well, who can have a problem with playing the coolest guy on earth?
I would love to be able to change his outfits, man. That guy overdresses for everything.
You actually can customize outfits this time around.
You can?
I saw in the menu. It's like, it's not much.
But he's supposed to be an extension of yourself, but he doesn't really feel like one.
Right.
So it kind of feels like, I don't know, like they can't really decide like which spectrum to be on,
Right. They need him for marketing to have like a main figure, but like just cool it on the personality a little bit.
Everyone liked Adam Jensen, so okay, like now everyone knows who he is, yada yada, let's go with him again, but I don't think he's that strong of a character.
Yeah, and I think I overstated it a little in my review as a joke, but I said he makes RoboCop look like the life of the party. And I mean, he really kind of does, because there's times where it's just like he seems so bored. I don't know if it's the voice actor just reading so much lore and just like build up and all this stuff. It just, there's points where you're just like, wait, are you even like trying here at this point? Like, what are you?
He's just numb to the world. It's
so
a little
bad.
commentary on becoming augmented. He's barely human.
But none of the characters really have any personality. That's another thing I pointed out, is they are all just on the script of like, here's what you need to know about what's going on. You never get any little tidbits from them outside of like a little moment at the beginning where there's an interaction with Alex where it's very casual. And from there, it's just all business.
So if you love
Mostly
Human
business.
Revolution...
Oh, I'd say play it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty dramatic step down, but if you like that a lot and want to continue that story, I think you should see it through.
Yeah.
Just pay a lot of attention, take notes, try to find, a play style that you can not exploit the enemy so much.
Yeah.
It's tough because they struggle. Like they're
They're
have a hard
chugging
time.
along.
I honestly think it's worth it even just for the hub worlds. Like they're so
They're
cool.
beautiful.
Like it's so much fun. I spent so much time in Prague, and like that was like a highlight so far. And
What's this I hear about you can buy Praxis points for real money? That's just like the upgrade abilities?
Yeah, so that's what, he's an AUG, and he has a plot point you find out about is that there was a hidden sector of hogs in him you didn't know existed. I don't know how that works.
We only use 5% of our brain, Reiner.
But that's just like a whole new like upgrade tree for players. It's not really like this huge plot point.
Wait, but it jumps you out into like the PlayStation or
No.
Xbox
This
store?
is just something you can do in the game. And I would say after playing the game, do not spend any money on it because you'll get all the points you need, especially if you're being thorough and searching everywhere. But yeah, you can buy in-game stuff. And I think there's a big hubbub right now about the pre-order bonuses that you get items for use in the game, but you can only use them in one playthrough once. And then those items are gone. So it was like a finite thing. It doesn't carry over.
That is a weird pre-order bonus.
It's like a consumable item?
Yeah, I'm not sure I didn't look up what the items were.
Okay.
But yeah, it's probably Praxis and some other stuff.
Yeah, I saw Steam communities in uproar because the PC version is a little bit janky. Like
Really?
I played it last
That's
night. It
weird.
seemed
I haven't-
fine for me.
PC one is messed up.
Yeah.
When
But this is Deus Ex, for the love of Christ. Like, don't mess up the PC version.
Published by Square Enix, though.
How is that happening?
Yeah,
This is an Ion Storm, and looking, like
It's
the
like old
OGs
heritage.
that were designing games for PC.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the issues are that people are having, but
We're about on a top 10 list of janky ports here pretty soon with
for PC,
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good top 300.
Batman, No
Yeah,
Man's
you
Sky,
could do
Deus.
top 300.
It was getting better for a while there, like the end of last generation. It's like, oh, clearly the place to play. And now, for some reason, the last couple of years, it's been rough. But moving on to other controversies, Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
Did you play that on PC?
No, I actually played that on PlayStation.
Oh, okay. What are your impressions so far?
I'm liking it. I should preface this by saying like I'm not like a hardcore Titanfall guy. Like I played the first game, I liked it. The progression ended, and I kind of left at that point.
Are there hardcore Titanfall people out there?
Apparently.
Okay.
We'll continue talk about them
All
soon.
right.
But so they're showing off in the tech test 2 modes. One is basically pilot versus pilot, basically team deathmatch.
Okay.
Like that never really appeals to me. Their other one is their new mode that's kind of replacing attrition called Bounty Hunt. And the mode makes no sense in terms of lore. So basically what's happening is like you're the pilots, you can, activate your Titans during the battle like you always can. But as you shoot people, you're collecting money. And then at certain junctures during the match, these weird little like pods drop from space and you're supposed to go throw all your money in it.
Like, is it like a coin slot on the space pod?
It's just a weird thing. You just hold the X button and your money goes in there. But as you build up the money, you're going to want to get back to that pod immediately because as you die, your money gets halved.
Wait,
Makes
and
sense
what's
to
in
you?
the pod?
The pod is like the bank.
It's a piggy bank.
You're stuffing
weird.
the piggy
Okay.
bank with
Yeah,
your money.
I imagine that was
And
just to
then
make it open.
It takes
but-
off then?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
they're done for a little bit and they're
Back to
closed, and then
Treasure
you
Planet.
so you can't just hang out there and like snipe dudes that are going to put their money in the bank.
Is that a fun system for multiplayer mode?
It's not bad because they go away, which is nice. So then you're more encouraged to go and make more money, and that's where the encounters happen. But it's kind of a weird mode. It makes no sense thematically, but I had fun with it.
Okay.
And the community's not too happy about it though, because
What is going on with them?
so they wanted attrition back, which was the mode everybody played last time.
What was that again? Which one was that?
That's basically I didn't play it a ton. I played Hardpoint, which is more like the domination conquest style.
Yeah.
And attrition, I guess it wasn't super memorable for me, but
Okay.
for everybody else, it was a big deal.
All right.
They're upset about that. They're upset because there's slower movement when you're in the air with your pilots. They've slowed you down just a little bit. So like when you're, wall running and jumping and vaulting and doing stuff like that, you're a little bit slower. The community is really upset about that. It's still a fast game. I mean,
Yeah, it's weird. It seems like all momentum in the industry is to make your multiplayer games faster and faster, and it's weird they would take this step to make it slower then.
yeah.
Is that
so
for the grapple maybe?
I don't know if it has to do with the grapple. They kind of did, how all the developers, once their game ships, they sit down and have that, like, let's tell the truth about our game. What do we really think? They felt it was a little too chaotic when you're a pilot navigating around. It just moved too fast for some of them. So that's kind of why they scaled it back, just to keep people orientated.
Okay.
And the community is not very happy about that. So today they actually posted a blog where they said they're going to start to change some of the things. And that was one of them. They're going to keep the speed increases as you're vaulting from wall to wall. You're going to move a little bit faster when you're leaping.
Huh.
So they're taking some of that into account with where they're going before the October 18th launch.
It's weird you see a
Or
mode
21st.
completely disappear, especially if it's one of the most popular ones. Usually those
I don't
things
know
kind
if
of
it
have
was
a
one of the
legacy
most popular
status.
ones. Yeah, that's just what people say on the forums. that
Gotcha.
play
The
it.
people that are being vocal
Yeah.
are upset. Gotcha.
Huh. That's so strange to me. So you haven't even mentioned the Titans yet. It seems like the big thing this time around is like there's different classes. Seems
Yeah,
like they
there's
have
different classes.
abilities.
So the way they described it is they're like Street Fighter characters. There's like Scorch, who's going to have like more like flame abilities and stuff like that. And I can't remember the name of the other guy, but he's more like ion cannon based. He's got,
Okay.
they don't have a ton of it's still multiplayer. You're jumping in, you're shooting dudes and jumping out. So, but there is a little bit more variety in how they operate. One of the things that people are having problems with this one that they're also addressing, they felt it was a little too slow to get your Titan. You had to like accrue points to get your Titan to drop.
Right.
It's a little bit slower. I still never had a match where I didn't have one. But some people felt like they need to get them quicker because that's what they love about the game. They want to be in their Titans.
Right.
So
So this is an instance of just people jumping into this tech test and playing for the first couple times, not understanding what it's like in the long term.
No, I feel like these are the people that played a ton of the last one, and they're like, they might still be playing the last one, and they're jumping in and saying, wait, this feels off. Why would you mess with it?
Do you understand it? Do you feel like they're just being whiny babies?
I don't know. Like, I mean, if I kind of like the pilot combat in the game. It's not a turnoff to me to run around with this super fast character wall running and vaulting, and now you have a grappling hook as well. It's fun.
Yeah.
So I like that element of the game. And then when I get my Titan, a lot of times I'll leave it on guard mode as I'm trying to capture a point or something like that, just so I have a little more backup.
Sure.
So I use mine a little more unconventionally, I feel like, than a lot of people do. They like to be in their mechs.
Yep.
I'm not a mech guy, really. I like having my mech there, but that's not why I'm playing that game.
It seemed like there was a lot of positive buzz about this game coming out of E3 and stuff. And is this slowing enthusiasm a little bit overall about the overall release?
I don't know. I think they have bigger problems than whether or not the game's going to be good. I think the game's going to be all right.
Oh, bigger problems than if the game's good? Like what?
Isn't that weird? A weird thing to say, right?
Yeah, what is it though? What are you getting at?
I think that game it needs to be delayed.
Not out of a game quality issue.
No, because it's coming out in October after Destiny, Rise of Iron,
Yeah.
after Gears of War 4, after Battlefield 1, which is published by EA, that comes out a week before it.
1 week?
Yeah. And the week after it comes
rough
out is
window.
Call of Duty Infinite
Warfare.
Space Fair, or whatever they call it. I can't keep up with the Warfare space. Yeah. So, I mean, that is a gauntlet of shooters, and we haven't mentioned Overwatch.
Overwatch,
You
new
know there's going to
characters,
be
yeah.
like new characters, Halloween skins, stuff like that drops at that same time.
Totally
this is
within
a
that
super
window.
competitive window.
Is there any chance at this point that they could delay it?
Sure. I mean, you might. I don't know why you couldn't. You could still keep it in the fiscal year if it comes out before March. So I don't think it would require like a SEC amendment.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like Titanfall 1 got delayed. Didn't it come out early in the year? I'm trying to remember when that came out.
It was going to be launch. It would still hit launch window. It was one of the first
Yeah, maybe it was. but
IPs of the new
I
generation.
want to say.
Yeah, but it was after the new year, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. It was nice to give it that little bit of a window, but
But that game was so damn good.
No, and I think that this one's
Yeah.
going to be good too. They're putting in this campaign. I haven't seen it. JV saw it a couple weeks ago. He thought it looked really good
Oh,
and
wow.
really interesting. So I think the game's going to be good. These are the guys that made Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and
Right.
Medal of Honor, Allied Assault. These dudes know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I saw him fighting with lightsabers in that Star Wars video. They're clearly a talented team. They know exactly what's going on. So how do you also play Battlefield 1. We haven't really covered your hands on too much about that game. How do you feel like these two are stacking up?
I played the closeout. They're so different to me.
Yeah.
Thematically, they're different. They handle differently. To me, they're not direct competitors unless you're looking at just the bottom line fiscally. Like you're competing for the same dollar that a shooter fan has.
Mm-hmm. But like different taste. Like one night
Yeah.
you want to play Battlefield, one night Titanfall. Maybe that's what EA is hoping for. Is just that different taste and vibe will carry it through so much that it is different enough to launch a week
maybe.
apart.
It seems like a bad idea for a franchise you want to sustain and like grow with.
Yeah.
Give it a clearer runway.
So which are you more optimistic about at this point? Battlefield 1 or Titanfall 2?
Probably Battlefield.
Oh, yeah?
I'm kind of sick of. I'm not sick. I still enjoy it, but there's so much space warfare and modern combat warfare. I'm really excited about just going back to a little more analog kind of experience.
Yeah. People want a slow shooter. That's the way to go. Let's slow down
It's actually
even
not
more.
slow. It's fast, but it feels different, because there's biplanes instead of jets.
Yeah,
and-
those Zeppelins are hauling ass.
You've gotta keep
There's just
blink,
one
they'll go
Zeppelin.
by.
There's just one.
Oh, sorry.
Wait,
The
really? How
Zeppelin.
does the Zeppelin work in that game?
It's like a
It's
Death
the
Star.
behemoth. Yeah, basically, like it's a auto balancing thing. So the team that's losing, after they're losing by a certain amount, or there's a certain amount of time left on the clock, the behemoth comes in.
Can you see it like slowly coming in on the horizon?
This weird battle horn sounds like, and all of a
like,
sudden there's this huge thing, and like there's a lot of positions where people can sit in there and fire artillery on the ground. You can hover it over an encampment so you can drop soldiers down. It's supposed to just get people back on the same playing field again.
And so if the other team just jumps in a bunch of biplanes and stuff, can they
It's
shoot
just
this
one
thing
shot.
down?
One shot, just pierce the balloon.
That's right.
and
You can
it's
throw
done.
a heavy rock at it. It'll take
That
it
would be
out.
hilarious if it was just one shot. But no, like there's anti-aircraft weaponry around the battlefield, so other people can contribute to taking that thing down. And it's only one of the behemoths. There's going to be like an armored train for one of them. I'm not sure how that
would
works.
track like Wallace and Gromit in
I
front
think
of the
it's
train.
just going to go in a circle around the battlefield.
like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I haven't played that map yet. I think that's going to be in the beta that comes out next week.
Oh, that's next week. Oh,
And then,
exciting.
August 31st is the beta. And then there's another behemoth that's like a giant warship that can just lob artillery onto the battlefield.
God, I hope I get into Battlefield 1. I hope it tickles that 1942 itch that I've had for a while. I'm excited about it. Battlefield 1?
I'm
Reiner?
more in the camp of Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
In that I'm excited about the campaign. Like, I played the first game, loved it, thought the combat was really unique, fast, awesome with those mechs. But I wanted a campaign because I thought their universe was really interesting. I wanted to know more about it.
The most we learned
getting
about
that.
it was like that cover story trip backstory, and that was pretty much it.
Oh, you forgot their story campaign they had. No, it was
I don't
awful.
know, some lady screaming over the top of gunfire. I don't know what the hell it was.
But yeah, so we're getting that. We're getting that campaign, and then the different classes like Scorch, stuff like that. Sounds like Transformers. That sounds awesome. So I'm excited in that capacity.
All right. Hey, Elise,
Yeah.
what was Germany like?
Germany was cool. I was excited to go. It was kind of a different Gamescom than previous years because there were no press conferences.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's not really. I think there was just one new game announcement, which was the lovely Metal Gear Survive.
Hell of an announcement.
It is lovely Metal Gear Survive. That's
Yep,
the official
the
title.
lovely
Yeah, don't forget.
Metal Gear Survive that fans just absolutely adored.
So just less news because of the lack of press conferences, then you think?
I think it's a mix. Like, I think now what my take is you have to keep in mind Gamescom has a really huge attendance rate this year. They had 500,000 people attend over the course of 4 days.
Imagine the smell in that hall.
It also, there's
It
garbage
is-
everywhere at Gamescom. They throw trash everywhere.
Yeah, and they have you think of EA and there's like the two floors. Then you go to something like Gamescom, there's like 10. There's like 10 of those. So it's incredible. But yeah, I think my main point is it's becoming more of a consumer event rather than keeping that publisher interest, I guess. And because of that, it also gets less media attention. And I think this year it's kind of at an all-time low in that sense, but also at a huge high in terms of consumer interest. So it's really interesting.
Do you feel like, I know it's tough when you're on the press side to get a sense of whether or not consumers are fully happy over there. Are the lines too long?
500,000 people.
It must be worth their while.
It must be. It's crazy though. I mean, Futter was telling me one year people were waiting 6 hours to play Watch Dogs. 6 hours for
That's
Watch
long
Dogs.
That's
Time to
your
wait for
day. That's basically like you
I
get to do
mean,
2 things in a day.
You don't even go to an amusement park and wait that long. I mean, that's crazy. And I don't know how much the tickets are for consumers, but it's
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it's worth it.
How long did you wait to play Watch Dogs 2?
Oh yeah. Oh, I got right in.
All right. What was that like? You played multiplayer, right?
Yeah. So Watch Dogs 2. I played Bounty Hunter, which is this new multiplayer mode coming.
A
Wow, a
And
lot of bounty hunter modes.
yeah,
Federation
it's-
Force.
So this pod drops in. You put your money in there.
Spider tanks come out.
You can play basically 3 versus 1 or 2 versus 2. And basically opposing teams, one plays as the hunter and the other plays as the hunted. And the way that you begin this mode in your campaign is by creating a lot of destruction in the world and getting the police to come after you. So in Watch Dogs, they have this seamless online online whatever. It's seamlessly online is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Sure.
And so basically, certain experiences that you have in your campaign will seep into other people's campaigns. So if the police begin to chase you and you created all that destruction, yada yada, that police chase is going to seep into someone else's campaign, and they'll be able to join and try to take you down.
It's kind of like that what was it, Need for Speed game
Oh,
that had
sure.
that shared world kind of stuff.
Is this
Yeah, I know what you're
Paradise?
talking about.
No.
Oh, that was Burnout.
Rivals?
Rivals.
Yeah. Is this just Ubisoft overthinking multiplayer again, or is this actually cool?
I mean, I wasn't blown away, but it was definitely fun. And
completely opt out, right? You can also
you
just
can
say
totally, yeah, you don't have to have that seamless online thing at all. But it's fun because it's PvP, and I think that with the hacking, it kind of adds this layer of difficulty in a way. Like I remember there were times where I was being chased while I was like in a car, and I'd have to use like my hacks,
Your mad hacks.
kind of like tactically, like
Right.
so I could make like a steam pipe explosion so that they could not continue.
But that would
pursuing
damage
me.
the city.
Yeah, well,
Police.
that's
DedSec
part
doesn't
of the
care
game.
about that.
Yeah, they're radicals.
What was actually really cool is like you can remotely control any other car, like just like make them spin out of control
Wait,
to get.
is it like Driver San Francisco? Can you get like an aerial view and jump into any car you want?
No, you can't do that.
Come on,
It's
Ubisoft.
literally just like
Your character's
you
not
can
in a
turn,
coma. Wow,
You can
what
turn the
hell?
other person's steering wheel left or right and kind of make them slow down a little bit.
You-
But like, I think the thing that I was disappointed with is like a lot of those hacks that you're doing while you're driving down the street are really similar to what was already in the previous Watch Dogs, outside of the whole steering wheel thing.
Oh,
I don't think you can put that on the back of the box. Steer left or right now.
But no, everything else, like the steam pipe explosions and just
Changing the lights on
the traffic lights
intersections.
and stuff like that's already been introduced in the previous iteration.
Yeah.
So
Just
that was
applied
a
in
little
a
bit
different way.
applied
Right?
in-
Like,
not even. I mean, the traffic light stuff, creating accidents and stuff like that's the same thing.
but for multiplayer, though, right?
oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
love the idea of role playing in multiplayer though, with someone just changing the lights and you're like, oh damn it, and you just stop and wait at the red light.
But no, I
Hackers.
mean, needless to say, it was still fun. It's still
Okay.
it's still good.
What was the coolest thing you saw at Gamescom?
That is really hard to say. It's a tie between South Park
Yes.
and Yooka-Laylee.
All right, we just want
Yes.
to dive into it. I have thoughts on both these.
Okay.
Well, you got to use the Nostramus. Is that
Okay.
what it was
No,
called?
I'm gonna. I'm
That's
gonna.
the ship in Alien, I think.
I will explain this strange device that I had to use. So about
Nostulus. How do you-
Nostrucular?
Nosulus Rift.
Nosul. Okay.
So about a week
Clever.
before Gamescom, the South Park team, they released this spoof video of the Oculus Rift. And instead it's called the Nosulus Rift, which is a mask that you put on your face and makes you smell farts.
Pretty cool.
And I watched this, before going to Gamescom, and I was like, okay, that's funny. I didn't ever think for 1 second it actually existed.
Yeah.
It freaking exists.
And they
It's
force
real.
you to wear it?
No.
It
They give you-
enhances the gameplay experience.
I literally said, yes, I would like to wear it.
They're like, there's a room of 1,000 people, and they're like, who wants to try this? And nobody raised their hand.
They
There's
give
at
you
least
it as an option.
Well, it certainly smelled better than Gamescom.
They had it presented in a glass case outside of the demo room.
An ass case. So you put it on your face. What did it smell like?
Horrible. It was
Is it like
disgusting.
novelty bad
I
or
mean,
just like
no.
fart
Is it
bad?
like bathroom? Yeah.
It's-
Did it smell like real farts?
Right. Let's really break this down.
God.
Like baby
I can't believe I'm
farts or
talking about
adult
this.
farts.
Yeah, like what was eaten? Like what came to mind?
Or is it just like, hey, we're going to make this vaguely smell like a Laffy Taffy version of garbage?
I don't know
I
how
don't know
to
what
break
that
it down
means.
for you guys.
I don't know. Did
It
it-
just smelled bad.
Okay. Fart bad?
Yeah, it was
Like,
it was
a
kinda
believable
farts.
fart.
But like
Gas
farts in your
bomb
face.
bad or fart bad?
Fart bad.
Fart bad.
I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
And you have to wear it so that every time you fart
you-
in the game,
yeah,
it
so
blasts into your
basically-
nose?
Yeah, so basically it blasts into your nostrils in certain parts of the game. Like, they have this thing they're calling it like total ass control.
Okay.
And so like, in
That's
the
an
first
EA
game
term.
when you could kind of like control like the poops a little bit with the X
The farts,
button.
please.
Or
dignity.
whatever. Okay. So now it's like they're expanding on that, and like I'm not going to go into detail. You can read my preview online, but like it's gross. But yeah, they expand on that, and then like so when you're on the toilet and like you fart, it actually goes into your face.
Day one for me. This sounds
They're not
amazing.
selling this, right?
No, it's
Okay.
it's a gag thing, and
But
it's
you-
only for
come
convention
on,
events. It's
no.
not. No, it's not a consumer item.
Reiner, I'm guessing it would cost hundreds of dollars. For hundreds of dollars, I will come over to your house and fart in your face while you're playing that game if you really want to experience this.
Deal,
But
baby.
as
Deal, baby.
disgusting as it was super dumb and super great at the same time, just because it left me in stitches. Like, it was so stupid, and I don't know if it was Gamescom delirium getting to me, but like I had a lot of fun with it.
Did the guy who like
And the
presented
game was-
it to you and explained it? Was he wearing sandals with a suit or anything like Palmer Luckey style?
I wish.
See him on a beach farting. Was it-
Really bad pose. Yeah.
now, if I was cynical, I'd say they're making this dumb gimmick to distract you from this game.
No, it's actually a really good game. It's similar to the Stick of Truth in many ways.
That's what I'm worried about because it's like the
But-
same town. It has to be.
It
It is the same town, yeah.
Sure, I mean the story's different, right? And
They've
Stick
been
of
there
Truth,
for 20 years on TV.
Yeah.
Stick of Truth was more like making fun of fantasy tropes, and now it's going to like superhero and Marvel Civil War and stuff like that.
There's also something kind of I've been thinking a lot about South Park recently. It's something kind of that I'm worried about with this game. I'm worried about a couple things. One of them is just like I think the part of the genius of Stick of Truth is just being a parody of RPGs. So much of that game is just making fun of Skyrim and referencing Skyrim, and now it's like, hey, this new game, it's a parody of superhero movies. Like I like it when it's a
Well, that's
commentary
what
on
we
games.
know so far.
Right.
I'm sure there's still going to be commentary in games. There has to be.
Yeah, I'm sure
That
it's gonna
well
be
is
in there.
I'm
deep.
sure there would be some.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but you were impressed.
I am impressed. The combat's different this time around. I guess it's still kind of similar to Stick of Truth in the sense that it's turn-based, but now they're kind of adding more tactical stuff to it where it's actually a board that both teams are on, and you can move around this board, but like each of your party members kind of can only move in certain directions and stuff. And depending on what attacks are used or used against you, everyone kind of gets knocked around the board, and it becomes really dynamic and sometimes a little chaotic.
It looked like I looked
It's more
at some
tactics
footage.
based, yeah.
Yeah, it seems more of a tactical RPG,
But
and
I
I'm
don't
worried
think
that it's
it's
just
no, I don't think it's a bad thing.
really. It looks
Yeah.
like the combat's going to take a long time.
Yeah. It reminded me a little of like Banner
Yeah,
Saga.
a little bit. Yeah. In terms of length, I can see that it would take a little bit more time.
I don't know if it's worth it. Maybe I just love Paper Mario so much. Like I love the combat in Stick
Sure.
of Truth. Like it was
It was well
Not-
done. It was quick, do it quick in,
don't-
quick out.
just a ton of modifiers thrown in there to make
It
it a
was
little bit more
balanced, too.
interesting.
Yeah.
I liked it. Yeah.
No,
so
I
the
agree.
idea of like
it was solid. It was
yeah,
solid.
but the idea of like, oh, we need to double down and make this more complicated with this weird strategic layout. I'm not sold on it yet.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's hard to say because I only had 20 minutes
Yeah.
playing the demo, to say, oh, yes, this actually really worked or did not.
Yeah.
But I liked what I played, and I didn't think of that before, but like the length of the battles could be maybe an issue.
And maybe we'll just have fewer or something to make up for
I
it.
don't
But
know.
I'm still really,
Yeah.
really looking forward to that game.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's hilarious. Like, no, really, I was just laughing the entire time, and I loved my time.
Divorced from the fart machine on your face, it made you laugh.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I took off that thing halfway through because I just couldn't take it, especially when I got to like the fart core bit where you like you and Human Kite kind of combine and you can do parkour just by
Oh, for core.
yeah.
To get around the town?
Well, you can use it in like isolated areas, like just to get to a roof or something and get some loot there and stuff like
It's
that.
Ubisoft, man. They got to put it in there
But
no matter
yeah,
what.
I don't know. Yeah,
Yooka-Laylee, though.
yeah, Yooka-Laylee I also really, really liked. I was not sure what I was going to think of it. But yeah, it's pretty pretty good.
Are you like a huge fan of Banjo-Kazooie?
Yeah.
Is it just pure
I'm-
nostalgia that's kind of carrying through on this one?
So I'm not the biggest Banjo-Kazooie fan out there.
That's fine. You're safe here, Elise.
I'm on the Donkey Kong Country side of things. Like I am
Donkey Kong 64?
Donkey Kong Country.
Okay.
The three,
Okay, good.
the
Good
trilogy,
answer.
not
Okay.
64 necessarily. But I'm familiar enough with Banjo-Kazooie to know that yeah, this is a huge love letter to that. And so you play as Yooka and Laylee, like
Mhm.
Chameleon and the Bat, kind of similar to Banjo and Kazooie. They work similarly, like you can fly, roll around, you can use this like tailspin, and yeah, so like the level I played is I was on this like tropical island and there's waterfalls and different cliffs and stuff and platforms to jump from, and it never really tells you like go here or do this, like very much in the 3D platformer sense, like you can do what you want first.
Mhm.
And there are like tons of different collectibles to get. Like they're
Just that rare
so
heyday.
Coins and
much.
feathers and
Oh yeah,
Smiles
You
and
got-
rainbows jumping around.
you got these quills that you can find, and depending how many you get, you can exchange them with this character called Trouser the Snake. And
It's really good. It's the snake wearing
Whoa.
pants. I saw it in one of the videos.
he is in fact wearing
I
pants.
just got that. Wow. They went for it.
a little bit.
predatory a little bit.
It's not. It's cool to have
Trousers.
like a really polished version of that old gameplay.
It's going to be
Like,
awesome.
As far as like 3D platforming options, recently 3D World's great.
Sure.
Oh,
No,
pretty
it's
dry after that.
yeah, but so yeah, you can exchange these quills for skill points, and you can get all these different abilities for Yooka-Laylee, and in any order you want.
Okay.
And yeah, there's like all these little characters that were spread out around the map. Like there was this pig knight, I guess, and Laylee kept trying to figure out his name, and then he's like, well, my name is Sir Hamelot, and it's like stupid little puns like that.
Very British.
Very British, very
All right.
Banjo-Kazooie, like all the way. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward
And
to
it
that.
plays really well. Like the controls are really, really fluid. And
Nice. Team 17 joined, by the way. Might be
Yeah,
talked about a
yeah.
little bit later in this episode.
I know.
Hey, I want to talk about something that you didn't want to talk about, or at least you didn't bring it up as something to talk about. But Metal Gear Survive.
Sure.
You did an interview about this. We debated the whole concept of this game last week, but did you learn anything from that interview?
I didn't really have an interview. It was more like it was a behind the scenes, behind closed doors presentation.
Okay.
And all they really showed us was the trailer again, and then a presentation with like one word on each slide.
Was it like Kojima style keywords? Race, meme.
Like, 4-player co-op, and then new weaponry. Like that's no, I didn't learn a whole lot. I mean, it takes place directly after Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes.
Did they explain if it's? I know it's dumb, but
It's
is it
all the stuff I know,
canonical,
you know.
or do they pitch it as like a side story?
I think they said it's a side alternate history.
It's an alternate universe.
I understand that they literally go to an alternate universe,
Oh.
but like
But in terms of the timeline,
it is, as a Metal Gear fan in the canon, do I have to consider it canon that a universal rift
I
opened
think
up
so.
before Mother
I
Base?
believe
I mean,
so.
you've accepted so much already. Why not?
But
just-
This is too far.
think the
This is
best-
too far.
I think the best part, though, is the wormhole is literally described as unexplained wormhole.
That is perfect. So
Uh-huh.
I'm on board now. I like that.
they bring you into this meeting and they have a slide that says new weapons and don't give a single example of one.
were, there
I had
any,
to go back to the trailer and
were there any whales or anything in there too?
Oh, flaming
No.
whales.
Yeah.
that's
I
only in
hope
No Man's
unicorns.
Sky.
You know, I was thinking, since this is like an alternate universe, who could say who voices Snake this time around? If he makes that
Oh.
cameo, bring back Hater.
If they got Hater,
He'd be a little bit cheaper
Fans would
than
be so
Kiefer.
conflicted.
Or just like cut up like clips of him talking from previous games and just shove it in there, like, you know, Chef from South Park. Okay, so that one ain't great. Let's see, ReCore. You played that.
ReCore, yeah. So ReCore is made by Kishi Inafune is actually producing it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a mix of like Armature and Concept that are developing it. So like got a bunch of like the Metroid Prime guys on it. Yeah, it's looking decent. It's looking okay.
Is that code for you were very unimpressed?
No, it's okay. I enjoyed it, but it's not like I don't know. It didn't really do that much for me.
I'm kind of excited about it just because, like, some of the
Well,
footage I saw, it reminded me a little
I-
bit of, like, Mega Man Legends. Does it
Sure.
tap into that at all?
Well, I think what's cool about it is it's kind of like a mix of like Metroid style exploration and also that kind of like hopping and gunning you'd see in Mega Man. And like there isn't any there's no cover in ReCore, so you're always like evading enemy fire by jumping around, or Jewel has like this ability called Dash, where she can like kind of glide in the air for a bit, and yeah, there's a fair there's a fair bit of platforming too.
Okay.
But yeah, so like I think the biggest thing that it's doing that's kind of cool is it's doing like color-coded combat, I guess is the best way to say it. Is so Jewel has different ammo types that she can use, and they're all different colors. So like red, yellow, and blue.
Uh-oh.
And different enemies are different colors. So corresponding to what color they are, you'll use that same ammo type.
Uh-oh.
Right.
It sounds okay. Why do you say that, Runner?
I've done this in games before. It's never been great.
Well, after, like, the first round of, okay, I see what to do here. Now it's just an annoying thing. Like, all right, switch to this
Well,
thing, switch to this thing.
Yeah, Sure, and also, but there are some enemies that change colors like just sporadically all of a sudden.
Whoa.
So that's
in a single color environment.
Innovation.
So what
Yeah.
was the big gripe? What didn't impress you?
I don't know. Like I guess I just wasn't that grabbed by the world.
Yeah.
And like even just in terms of exploration, it seems very barren. And it's I don't know. I just like there wasn't, and even the gameplay. Like you there's like a lock-on system that you use. It's not like free aim and stuff. And I felt that didn't work as well as I wanted it to.
Kind of a bummer. You're kind of rooting for Inafune to, he
I don't want to make it sound
about all the Japanese development cultures holding us back as creators and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
you see him get out in the wild, and you're like, all right, let's see what he's got. He's been pent up.
You get some Microsoft cash behind you. Let's go. And it's like, okay.
And Mighty Number 9 didn't fare so well,
No.
and now we're
And
looking
now-
at this. And I mean, the
and a
jury's still
price
out on
drop
this, obviously.
with this, too,
Yeah, and this is a
was
$40 game.
Right.
Weird.
That was
Right.
so weird that they announced that like right away. Like, oh, by the way,
Lowered expectations.
what did you think of that trailer? Well, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
That trailer you just watched, $40.
And their angle is like, oh, we wanted to reach a wider audience, in theory. And
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
like I
it's
saw or
odd.
heard an interview where they reminded people like, oh, Viva Pinata launched at $40. Like, it doesn't mean it's terrible. It's just
Right.
for a
It's
younger
true.
audience. They're trying to
yeah.
go for that.
And NFL 2K5 was that $20?
Yeah, that was $20.
See,
and that was
try to-
phenomenal.
yeah.
That's the best game ever made. There we go. Maybe you can learn more about ReCore on next week's episode.
That's a
Who
roll of
can
the dice.
say?
Let's see.
All right, cool. So good time at Gamescom, huh?
Yeah, I had a great time.
Nice. Should we shift so Elise can stop talking?
Nah,
Sure. What
let's just
do
make
you
it
want to
keep-
talk about?
Elise,
Madden?
tell us about Madden.
Oh yeah, I love Madden. I don't play sports.
How many
games
American
much.
football games have you watched?
I don't.
It's okay to
watch
see zero.
football, You guys.
Not a
I'm
Canadian
sorry.
football?
I'm really not into sports.
All right.
I'm not. I mean, even with hockey, and that's like very unpatriotic of me to say.
Blasphemy. That's why they kicked you out of Canada.
That's why I'm here. By the way, speaking of Canada,
Oh, yeah.
carburetors are a thing.
Oh, on last week's podcast, you listened to that?
Of course.
Apparently, they call trash compactors carburetors.
That's pretty impressive. That's a fancy name for
It is a
garbage
very
can.
I
fancy name.
like that.
I know. I think we should
I think
totally
it's
get it to catch
disgusting that
on.
you guys call it trash disposals
Well,
in the sink. I mean, I guess that's what it is, but
It's
like
better than rubbish bins, our friends from
Carburetor
the
is-
UK.
that's like it's like the sound it
That
makes.
might be the best one.
carburetor.
oh, so you think that's what it is?
I don't know.
It's an onomatopoeia situation with carburetor?
Carburetor.
It's good. I didn't know if that was just a Halifax thing that Haley was talking about or if it's all of Canada.
No, it's all of us.
What the hell?
Even in Frenchy Quebec, yeah.
Weird.
Mm-hmm.
But we should talk about Madden kind dividing over here. Madden 17. It Kato reviewed it. He
Yep.
seemed to like it a lot.
It's good.
It's good.
It's
now.
weird saying that.
Case closed.
I've been, when the 2K thing died, when EA was like, we're buying the NFL license, Madden was doing well there at that point, but it had a rough last generation, and it's always been wayward. They come up with a new feature set and then they scrap it the next year and try something else. They were never building on the foundation.
Just novelties. They
Yeah,
can
just
market
weird
something.
stuff. Like there's that weird Obi-Wan Kenobi training mode. Remember that one, Reiner? Where
What?
like Madden was on this Tron hologram thing.
What year is this?
I don't remember exactly. That was last gen. Maybe like 07, 08.
Yeah.
And he
somewhere
would
in
float
there.
around a field?
It was just like, you were like on Tron, the football field.
I love this. Okay.
That was
Yeah.
the right direction.
yeah, they completely blew it.
So they were doing dumb stuff like that, and they weren't really paying attention to like what football fans. This is the most popular sport in America. Football fans are very knowledgeable because of things like fantasy football. They keep up with all the trends that are happening in the league.
Yeah.
They just want real football. They want
Right.
the game to look like what they see on Sundays.
Yeah, get back down to basics.
Yeah, and they-
like Worms WMD.
There we go.
Okay.
And so they finally got in a new creative director a couple years ago, Rex Dixon, and like a lot of the same old guys are there that know how to keep the ship running. But they've started to really kind of triangulate and hone in on like, okay, let's just focus on how can we make the passing game better? How can we make the rushing game better? How can it look natural when people are blocking and tackling and stuff like that? And so they've been doubling down on those things that football fans have wanted to see for a long time. So I actually feel Madden's better right now than it's been in the last decade.
Really? Just this, not
Yeah,
even
it's,
last
it's not the best sports game that's made or anything. Like they've got a long ways to go to catch up to like an NBA 2K, but this is the best. I'm having more fun playing Madden right now than I have in a decade.
There's just no janky things, new features you have to worry about. It's
There's always going to be some janky things when you're talking about physics animations with like 22 giant fast men crashing into each other. Like that's pretty hard to design. You're going to see some stuff like that, but the passing game feels like it makes more sense. The way that the zone coverages work when you're analyzing the defense feel more natural, and you don't feel like you're getting gypped by like crazy AI that can do crouching tiger, hidden dragon leaps for the football and stuff like that. Like,
so bad news if you're really into Madden glitches on YouTube.
no, there's still going to be plenty of those, but they're not happening all the time. You know, FIFA gives us the best glitches every year, but FIFA's a really good game. You know, you can have the best of both worlds.
I like that the team came together under Rex Dixon.
Yeah.
It's like Lombardi-esque. Like you just follow that guy to the end of the earth. I'm sure he's 5'2" and a dweeb.
No, he's a big dude.
All right, good. I'm glad it fits the name.
Yeah.
So
but his background was like shooters and stuff. Like he's been around forever. So
wow. So definitely pick it up if you've been
I think
down on Madden for a while.
You should go check it out. Yeah, I feel comfortable saying like these are, if you like football games and you've missed them because Madden you felt like was stuck in a rut. I feel like they're getting out of that rut.
I heard something blasphemous that I hadn't heard, that apparently with this Madden they changed the rules because of the upcoming season. So like touchback gets you like the 25-yard line now. Yeah,
that's a real rule.
This is bizarre. Okay.
Yeah.
And also like the new Minneapolis stadium's in the game.
That was in last year too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Already? It was like under construction still.
Well, I mean, they just look at it. You know, they didn't come in and take the full scan like they did with TCF Bank a while back, but they were able to approximate it.
Huh. All right, cool. All right, good news for Madden fans.
Yeah.
And Reiner, your Madden is Pokemon Go, is that right?
That is, yeah. I'm still playing Pokemon Go.
I heard it changed your life.
It did. Yeah, there should be an editorial on the site now about how it's changed my family's life, not just mine.
Wow, for the better.
Yeah, my wife is way into it. I'm into it. My daughter loves it because we're outside all the time. But I didn't realize what a creature of a habit I was and my family was, just in little routines in your life. And this game has definitely broken that and opened up the world to us. Like, I didn't realize like how little of my surroundings I actually knew.
Totally.
Like,
Sure.
just little waypoints like the Pokestops or gyms. Like, oh, there's a park over here, and we go over there. And it's like, oh, there's this like whole strip mall with all these like family restaurants we didn't know about.
Right.
And we're traveling more. We're probably racking up a lot of gas mileage, but we're exploring the world and we're having a good time doing it. And the gameplay, it's not constant. So it's like we do something every once in a while. I'll be on it. Then she'll be playing with my daughter, and vice versa. I'll put the game away and go play. And it's just been fantastic. We've been going outside a lot. I've always feared the outside, but
now you're embracing
it. Actually is not bad.
It's not as bad as video games make it seem.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
I'm really with you. Like I hate driving, I hate parking, and I found myself exploring so much with Pokemon Go where it's like, okay, Rice Park in downtown St. Paul is the place to be. I got to park in downtown St. Paul. Not even blink. It's like, yeah, totally worth it. Of course. But like, I guess I'm driving down to Edina a couple times a week. What the hell am I doing with my life?
And we just discovered there's, I don't know if viewers know this, but there are rare Pokemon that spawn at certain points, at least in Minnesota, where there's nests.
Yeah.
So it's like we're hunting down. It's almost like we're in an RPG going to like a dungeon. You know what I mean? Like we're tracking down these certain locations to see if the rumors are true. And they've all turned out, like we found a place that spawns Pikachus like Pidgeys. Just nonstop Pikachu.
The promised land.
It is. Yeah. That's what Kelly and I were like, oh my gosh. And then we laughed. We're like, we're such dorks. like we think this is amazing. Like this is one of our moments of the year. Finding Pikachu.
I recommend like looking on a subreddit for like your hometown Pokemon Go subreddit for that, and they will more than likely have broken down the different nests and then just go around and get all those. So you're level 24 now. I think we're matched.
We're
there.
both level 24. Yep. Kelly's 24.
What's your Pokedex at?
102.
Dang, I'm at 99. God, I gotta get more of those nests.
But that's the thing. It's like
you're never gonna beat Reiner when it comes to these competitions.
I'm close. I'm so close.
But we're totally in like Game of Thrones right now, where it's like winter is coming, and it's like, okay, we got next weekend. We should go here and get the Growliths, and then we got to get the Charmander nest. And one thing we did, like this is crazy, real quick, is there was a huge rainstorm over the last weekend, and we were so into like finding stuff, and we had these plans set in concrete where we wanted to go find Charmanders. And we had to go to this nature preserve to do it. And we're like, okay, it'll just be these paths through the wilderness, whatever. No big deal. It turns out all the paths were mud, like dirt. So it turned to mud after the rainstorm. So I'm there with like my dog, which is white. And my wife's there with Evie, and we're in the wilderness, like out in the woods and swamplands, like going through these muddy paths, just getting dirty like you wouldn't believe, catching Charmanders. But the great thing was, like, there was like 30 other people out there doing the same thing. Yeah, it was like, this is nuts.
God, yeah, I was in downtown St. Paul, and there were hundreds of people in Rice Park. And a Lapras spawned, according to some tracking system, like 6 blocks away. It was a herd of hundreds of people running 6 blocks in downtown St. Paul. Like, it was scary to be in the middle of. Oh, hell yeah, as a Lapras. So as I was running then, just the streets are filled, and there's this one guy running next to us, and there's no other space for him to go, and there's a giant trash can, like the size of this podcast table. He just parkours over it, farcours right over that trash can. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then just completely shut down the street because everyone's just wandering around in there trying to get this Lapras before they head back out. It's still a thing, even though it dropped 15 million players in a month.
Well, it only has 30 million left.
Oh, jeez. Mop it up.
End
We'll
times.
see. Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, we're in for the long haul. At least we'll see. We want to catch all of them. That's kind of the end game. And level them up, take gems, stuff like that. But I think the big end game is catching as many as we possibly can until that kind of well dries up. So it's up to Niantic to replenish that probably in the next few months. I think they need to.
No, you just
For
need
the
to
hardcores.
travel. That's
Well, no,
that's what the English people do. They like travel to Iceland.
Yeah, but
and go,
once
like,
once you have everything, that's kind of it, right? Like there's a finite number of Pokemon you can get in your
But
Pokedex.
so far-fetched to Mr. Mime. You'd have to go to Asia and Europe for that, in theory.
I'll get on the plane right now.
All right, good luck finding Mr. Mime. He's tough. All right, but we should probably move on to emails,
Sure.
all right? All right, let's do it. All right, everybody, we've got some super cool emails from the community here. So I need you, with all of your might, to please pay attention to every email that's sent in, because at the end we have to choose a winner, and then we're going to ship them out something nice. So if you want to send in feedback, do it at podcast@gameformer.com. We welcome thoughts, criticisms, words of wisdom, pitches for what to have on the podcast in the future.
Questions.
Questions, that's a big one. News stories you want us to comment on, anything like that. We love that kind of
Compliments.
stuff. We'll even take those. Usually
those
edit them
don't
out
come.
of emails.
They're not from the internet.
So Barney from Singapore, first person to write
Oh,
in.
sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
By the way, we should note we cannot ship our wonderful prizes overseas. So we love you, international listeners.
You win, Barney.
Yeah, you'll win spiritually, maybe. So Barney writes in and says, do you think it's possible to unhype a game? I look at the case of No Man's Sky and I feel like the game world would have done better if there wasn't so much hype leading up to its release. Is there more the developer could have done to better manage the expectations?
No.
Is there any way that a developer would ever try and like put the brakes on hype for a game?
I don't see why they would. In a way, isn't that part of marketing? Is you want to get the hype up?
Right. That's
So-
the overall goal. Actually, on the No Man's Sky cover story trip, you can see it in the video interview. We have a whole video, I think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, about like managing the hype of No Man's Sky.
I think
and
hype usually just dies down naturally after a while.
Right. Or the internet starts on fire and is demanding
Yeah.
your resignation.
Or pitchfork sales go through the roof.
Yeah. But no, I asked
Totally.
Sean, like, what is the right level of hype that people should have for this game? Do you want to lower expectations? And his angle is like, I enjoy being excited for games. Like, I was super excited for so many games as well. So I don't want to set people's expectations anywhere and just let it grow naturally. And it grew into a fever pitch.
I guess if the hype is coming from misinformation, I think then you got to kind of step in and be like, this isn't the game. This isn't what
Right.
the game is. I don't want to go into the debate of all that stuff, but I think that's the one time where if you are pitching something and people are latching onto something and that doesn't end up being it, then you're in trouble. Then you got to step in. Otherwise, pitchfork sales
Yeah.
are
Like
like
a we
Well,
have
it's
you-
rightfully through the
Hype
roof.
is an organic thing. Like, it's not like the media sits down and goes, let's all cover the shit out of this game
Right.
until our readers can't stand it. You know, like we're following the trends of our readers. Our readers are really interested in stuff like Destiny. We're going to cover more of it, you know? And I think No Man's Sky was one of those things where, at least from the media perspective, there is a ton of consumer interest about this game, or gamer interest. I hate the word consumer. Gamer interest about this thing. And we're going to follow what the gamers are interested in.
Yeah.
And just from the most basic premise of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like just going all the way back to the very first video from the Video Game Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Like that thing just took off like you wouldn't believe. And we were all excited just from that one video.
sure.
Right?
Right. I'm trying to think of like good examples of games that kind of got de-hyped right before they came out. And I think of like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's a good example, where maybe at the announcement people were like, "Oh, cool." Then the more they emphasize multiplayer, expectations kind of lowered, and then it came out again. It's like,
Didn't
this is good.
BioShock Infinite, when it came out, everybody was like confused about what it was, and I think that one kind of had a weird, rough launch. They did that event,
but then the game didn't come out for another 4 years beyond that, so there's plenty of time to
Battlefront. When you do the betas and they don't deliver, Battlefront was one where people did the EA access, the 10 hours or 7 hours of access, and they're like, that's all I needed. So if I saw everything that game had to offer.
So if you want to unhype a game, just let people play it? Is that
play it in advance? Yeah, I think that is the probably primary way that you can hurt your game is, de-hype it. Is let them play it.
Let's see. Pat from Ireland, 2 internationals in a row. Writes in, he says, in light of the currently varied responses to No Man's Sky, I was wondering if any of you have been disappointed by a game that was featured as a cover story in the past, specifically ones which you were optimistic about during the cover story trip. How do you go about keeping your excitement in check with the knowledge that the game may not turn out as anticipated?
I mean, you see them so early, and you're a lot of times, or some of the times, I guess, a lot of our cover stories are a few months out too. But yeah, for me, it's Alpha Protocol.
Oh yeah, that one, the weird Adam Sandler cover art that we had.
What?
Where it's just, he looked like Adam Sandler. But
I don't even remember this one.
But that one, I was like, yes, I want this type
such
of
a cool concept.
RPG, and big fan of stuff that BioWare did and all that. Like, I wanted other developers to do that kind of stuff, and then it just tanked. Like, I started playing, I was like, this is awful.
But the bullet points for that game are so good. Like,
yeah, they
spy
are.
RPG. This would be the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's the big one there. I was like, oh, this is not good. Oh, it should have been good. This is not good.
You can feel excitement like on a cover story trip. Like, usually when we're on our way back to the hotel, it's a lot of like, what did you think about that? And you're always more aware, I think, of like, it could always go wrong a million different ways in development. But I remember like Bertz, when you and I were on Rainbow Six Patriots, of course. There's a good example.
I was bummed that got canceled.
Yeah, talking about the ultimate disappointment. Yeah. But like even like AC3, like I remember being on the trip and all of a sudden like, holy crap. Like not too many games have done a great looking outdoor environment. And I know Miller absolutely loved that game. I feel like you were a little bit cooler on it, right?
Yeah, I kind of had a lot of problems with that game.
Yeah. Let's see. Fortnite's another one just because it isn't out yet.
Yeah, I wish that game was fun when we played it.
It would seem great. Yeah, I would love to play it. I just feel like by the time it comes out, people will be so sick of crafting and building in every possible game.
Yeah, it might miss its window.
Absolutely. If it would have launched right away, though. The other ones that come up to mind from 20 years ago, Reiner?
Oh, boy. I mean,
Kane Lynch. Remember Kane Lynch?
Yeah, Kane Lynch. That was a cool concept, cool setup.
Yeah.
IO, those guys doing Hitman and stuff like that. We were pretty excited.
And they came and showed a demo that we ended up saying, like, yes, let's do this cover story. And then they came back like a year later, or was it 2 years later?
Yeah, like, so we saw this demo early on, and it was like, okay, like, picture that, like, really polished up and looking good. And then it was like, they came back, like, right around release. It's like, it's the same. They didn't polish it. That was it. That was done. It was just slightly different. It was like,
there it is.
It was like, oh, okay.
Hey, Kane Lynch, everybody.
Gotcha.
Cool. Ian writes in and says, does the price of a video game factor into the review process? Could you give Inside a 10 if it was $60, or would you give No Man's Sky a higher score if it was only $15?
I don't think price should ever factor in.
That's actually our policy.
Yeah. Especially because it gets confusing. Like if the game goes on sale later on, how the hell do you factor that in?
No. Like those are two separate factors. Like a quality of a game is not necessarily dependent on the sale price.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately up to the consumer. I mean, our job is to explain, as critics, what this game is trying to do. Is it doing it well? Did we enjoy our time with it? And they can look at that. And usually we talk about how long a game is, or, like how much time we've sunk into something. They can make that qualitative evaluation themselves.
Right. Will Out West writes in, I wanted to know, what are your favorite games to escape from stress? I remember when I was younger, I would play Animal Crossing on the GameCube to have fun and escape from my crappy foster family and from the stress of coming to grips with my sexuality. I remember using the journal feature to slowly write through my emotions and feelings, and feeling relief that I could say things in this world that I couldn't in the real world. Wow. Stuff like, OMG, KK Slider is so cool and cute. Did you guys write out long-form journal entries in Animal Crossing on the GameCube?
I did, for my friends and wife.
Oh, perfect. Do you guys have go-to stress games, though?
I mean, it's been Stardew Valley for a while now,
Oh, the
for
best
sure.
game.
Yeah, it's just it's calming, and there's like a meticulous like just structure to it that I can just kind of escape and go into that for a while and just not think about anything else.
Just water crops. I mean, you got to worry about your relationship with Pam and Maru.
Yeah,
but outside
well,
of that,
I can just water my plants for a while and get another relationship.
how far are you in that game?
Oh God.
Oh man, here we go.
Sorry.
I can't remember. I haven't actually played in about a month or so.
Because you haven't been stressed out. Your life's been so
haven't-
easy.
I just haven't really had the time to go back to it. It's like it sucks me in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I like to just go into an open world that I really like and just
Yes.
like I'll jump into GTA 5 and just start driving up
That's
the coast
I-
and the horizon, or like just get on the horse in The Witcher and just explore.
Not do any quests. Just look around the world for a while.
Cruise around.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I do the exact same thing with The Witcher, like a lot. Like I'll just like go and just stare at sunsets.
just go
for
sit on a
while.
hill with Geralt.
See, doing stuff like that for me stresses me out more because I'm still
'Cause
thinking
you-
about it.
Because you have a million quests to do.
Well, no, but I just like playing something like Abzu, I'll still be thinking about what's stressing me out.
Okay.
So I'll go into like shooters. Like I'll play like competitive Call of Duty or play something like Doom where it's so intense that I am just focused on that world. Like that's kind of how I don't know.
Those are what
Let
the
it
Onion
go a
refers to
little
as
bit.
cooldown games, right? You remember that old Onion bit where the guy plays games for like 15 hours straight and then has a cooldown game of like Call of Duty or Madden or something?
Yeah, that's kind of basically what I do though, is like I'll
Perfect.
play those and then afterwards be like, oh yeah, there's that issue I'm dealing with in life, but
Yeah.
just let me cool down for 2 hours.
One that would only cost people thousands and thousands of dollars is, I forget when it was. It must have been like when I was working on Destiny stuff before I flew out for the next cover story trip. I was very stressed out, didn't have much time. And I just went down to the VR room, and there is a free game called NVIDIA VR Funhouse. It's like this weird tech demo, and it's just dumb carnival games, but really well done. Like I found it because Chet, one of the writers for Portal from Valve, said it's one of his favorite VR experiences. And there's one game within that is really fun and a great stress reliever where it just gives you 2 giant swords, and then you're in this carnival and it just surrounds you with balloons, and you just go nuts and swing swords for a while on balloons.
Balloon Ninja?
Yeah, it's really perfect. I recommend it to everybody. Buy VR, everybody. It's the future. Corey writes in and says, "Hey, GI crew, my name is Corey and I'm from New Hampshire. Just wanted to say I watch the show and replay religiously. Think you guys could do a replay of Blinks the Time Sweeper?"
Yes. Let's do it.
All right, there we go.
We could even do Blinks 1. Wait for it. And 2.
The Blink special.
Yeah.
Igor K says, "What is the process for choosing a replay game? Is it completely random, or is there a voting process of sorts?"
That's kind of random, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I like having everything be kind of by committee at Game Informer. We do a lot of our story pitching, stuff like that. I like getting everybody's voice and having people be a part of the show. A lot of times it's very last minute where it's just like, well, we got to get a replay game. We just I'll go in the vault most of the time, pick something out. Sometimes we'll schedule meetings where we try to plan out a month, but the month never really ends up shaping out that way
Because there'll be news or something that we want to tie it in.
Yeah, so the over planning doesn't work. The under planning seems to work the best. But yeah, it's very loose. The rules, there is no rule. It's just whatever we think would be best for that week for our viewers or the most entertaining.
There we go. Igor also says, "Some games from the PS1 era that I would love to see you guys play because it'd be funny are Brave Friends from Musashi," which we totally did as a replay. Parasite Eve.
Did that?
All right. Legend of Legaia. We did that.
Haven't done that. I
Nope. As a roulette.
We did.
You guys did it on the Final Fantasy X replay. Because I love that game and I was pissed that I missed it. Legend of Dragoon, which would be super boring. Discworld, Space Griffin VF9, Medieval, and Monster Rancher.
Just everything on PS1. All of PS1's collection.
Yeah. I still really want to do Monster Rancher.
I would love to. That's the game where you, for people who didn't know, is kind of like collecting monsters in Pokemon Go, but you do it by inserting different discs into your PlayStation 2. And the game reads the code on the disc and spits out a unique monster based on that disc.
And I still think the best way to do this is to take all of our Super Play games that have been on discs and then
See what they spawn.
make them fight each other.
Such a great idea. We'll do that someday. So
Also, director of 15, Tabata, worked on Monster Rancher. So we can tie it in with that game's release. There we go.
I think I played Monster Rancher 2 more than any game on PS2.
Really?
I kid you not. I was so into it. Like seriously, like probably hundreds of hours. Just discs
Man.
everywhere.
I also played a lot of that. I don't know if I can make that claim.
loved it. My monsters were amazing.
I'm sure. Unbeatable.
We got to find your save file.
Ooh.
I probably still have it actually, yeah.
Oh, let's boot it up. Solid Jake says, this is a whole replay batch. It's normally not this replay focus. On the first episode of the Half-Life Super Replay, Reiner mentions that a real gun was shot at a TV instead of a fake one as an honest mistake at Game Informer. How did this even happen? What gives?
What?
Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
I have no idea what he's...
Is it maybe the Solid Snake story?
Yeah, I think it was the... we had an alarm going off here, and we have a bunch of statues in our office, and one of them is Solid Snake. And he is standing there with his gun out. And
Naked Snake specifically.
Naked Snake from Metal Gear Solid 3. Sorry.
Right.
But he's standing there, his gun like this, and he's right in the entryway. So the police showed up, checked everything out, came inside, and the lights are off, and there's just the silhouette of this guy with the gun. And the police officer said, like, I almost put a bullet through that thing's head. So that statue's now in Andy's office.
Perfect.
We moved it.
Bronson from Michigan says, I just watched the Game Informer Vault video that our former intern Leo put together. Definitely check it out. And was amazed by the history of the games from a magazine I've been reading for 18 years. What were everyone's first thoughts when you saw the Vault for the first time? Reiner, I guess you don't really count because you helped build it.
Saw it. From the little egg to what it is now.
Yeah.
I just go in there and like walk down memory lane and be like, oh my God, I remember this game. I forgot about this. You know, like
Well,
there's
just the other
so
day,
many...
remember you were like, we should play NHL 94. I just want to get that set up somewhere. Just go hold a cartridge.
It's really cool to have that. And when
Yeah, it's like a little mini museum, like in the place that we work, which is really cool. And I remember like during my internship, it was like on one of the first days that I was here, and just like just walking in there for the first time and just being like, wow, like I work here. That was or not. I'm working here for 3 months now. I work here forever. But
there we go.
Yeah, no, it was weird.
I remember being really nervous because like during the job interview that like went in there, and so I was trying to like reference the fact that I knew replay well. They'd be like, "Oh, this is why you guys do the replay show for these games. Oh, it's Twisted Metal in here."
Yeah,
and then
it's
went
something though.
Yeah, I ran over to the Game Gear section to be like, "Oh, do you have the old games that I used to have for this crappy system?"
Going back to the picking stuff up for replay. Pretty much every time I go in there, this is how extensive that collection is finding something that you didn't see. You know, it's like, oh, holy crap, remember this? Like, oh my God, I've never seen this. Let's check it out. Pretty much every time you go in there. It's crazy.
Especially because like with Back of the Box Trivia for this podcast, I've scoured those shelves so many times, and still somebody will bring up some random game like, I don't know what Space Griffin VF9 is, but I'm sure it's in there, and I just have never looked at that case, but I'm sure the back is very confusing.
When I started, we used to do the classic reviews in the magazine still. So I would just have this running tally of stuff. I was like, next time I'm up for that, I'm going to go grab one of these games.
Oh, awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Why did we stop doing that?
Because we got a website.
Oh, that's right. Brian from Pittsburgh says, with so many developers and indies around, how come bigger studios never license out their IPs to be made by other studios? For example, Game Freak will probably never make a 3D console Pokemon game again. Why not just pay another studio to make it using Nintendo's and Game Freak's resources?
They just licensed it to Niantic.
I guess that's a weird example. I guess the easy answer is it's a lot of money. You'd have to be paying the other studio to work on that.
Money and trust. And you know.
And if it bombs, what happens to your brand?
Right. And also it takes resources, even if it's all outsourced, where they want producers from the mother company watching over it. It takes up manpower. But remember that news story a while ago where Square was saying they were opening up their vaults to have other developers come in and like make a new Gex and stuff like that? Have we heard anything about that since?
I don't think so.
That was weird.
It was very strange.
Let's never get back to it. But
I'm sure those discussions happen all the time, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's little developers they talk to, or
for sure.
You know, like, hey, what can you do with this?
Why not give Parappa to Harmonix? Just throw him a bone. Let him make the next Parappa. It's not that hard. It would cost like $20,000.
He's back. New anime series.
That's right. But you hear that they're 90 seconds long?
Perfect.
That's all I can say. Be reminded that it exists.
Step on the break. Okay, I'm done.
There we go. David Wilson says, "Hey, Game Informer crew, when I listened to the Gary Whitta interview from a couple weeks back, something he said really bothered me. He spoke about writing for Halo 5 and mentioned that they kept telling him all 4 players needed to be playable at the same time for co-op. That seems to put such a constraint on the story. So my question is, do you think continuous co-op games is worth it from a story perspective, just so all players can have fun at the same time?"
I think you just have to take a different approach, right? You know that you have 5 people looking at 5 different things at any given moment in a game like that, or 2 players even is really complicated to design for. So it's really hard to create a set piece moment that can draw in a story element to, you know. I just feel like you can do it. I think you can do it really effectively, but environmental storytelling is probably a better way to go, like a Left 4 Dead where people piece together the story of what happened.
Right.
Than a direct narrative.
I'm trying to think of go for it.
No, just thinking of like Brothers, which is single player, but that would work really well as like a co-op experience and as a story experience.
Kyle specifically asked the director if you should play that game co-op, and he said, absolutely not. You're completely missing the point if you split a controller.
I guess so, yeah.
But I actually did play it that way for part of it.
It's more ensemble storytelling, right? Like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, where it's a group of people that are always kind of together succeeding. Yeah, there are points where they're meeting each other, but once it really hits, sinks in, that narrative, that's what it's about, is that group. So yeah, you just got to, like Bert said, it's a different style of storytelling. Yes, it limits you in some capacities of telling interesting stories for each character, but yeah, you just got to focus the narrative in a different way.
I'm trying to think of like the most directed narrative approach that's worked well with co-op. Army of Two. Two middling
Portal?
success. Yeah, Portal's a good example. I mean, it's pretty minimalist for the co-op story, but maybe that's just the way to go. You can't hold the hands too much. Chris says, hello, podcasters. My name is Chris, and I'm writing in from Seattle. On the Rise of Iron podcast, someone wrote in about preferring to play games on a small monitor as opposed to a 60-inch TV. Reiner, you're here for that. I've learned one key thing. It doesn't matter how big the screen is as long as you have a good sound setup. Good speakers or headphones trump screen size anytime. I was wondering what the crew's opinion is on the topic of sound systems, headphones, and if you think that good speakers can make up for a small screen.
I think they're necessary, but for a different reason. You know, you're hearing what's going on behind you or to the side of you in a shooter. That's really important, but seeing what's in front of you is also really important. I mean, I look like a little kid whose mom is going to yell at. I'm right up at the screen when I play a shooter. Yeah.
Like not even monitor, like TV?
No, like my 40-inch
like TV,
like I'm really close to it when I play a shooter because I want it to be immersive, like my peripheral vision a little bit more.
Okay. You should try a curved screen.
I know. That's what everyone keeps telling me.
It's an interesting approach to the idea of like saving money on a smaller screen, just going all in on a nice pair of headphones. It's probably smart. Like one of the biggest changes I've had in my gaming habit over the last couple of years is getting a nice pair of headphones. I've never really seen the value before.
They're
Like,
awesome.
It's game changing.
Yep. I just see a room with this booming sound system and then a little 20-inch TV at the end of it.
The end of a
Maybe
long
not
hallway.
the best setup.
Yeah.
Games like Rainbow Six Siege too, like you have to have a headset for that, so you can hear the footstep. I mean, it just adds to the tension.
Yeah,
It's so
for
cool.
sure. That's a great example.
I would say, though, if you're investing money and you have limited funds, go with the big screen first because it is such a limited thing for the number of games that it's really necessary for like hearing footsteps and what's around your periphery.
Yeah. Chandler Miller says, since the release of No Man's Sky, turns out that game had an impact on the industry, I've been seeing clips of Game Informer's videos showing up in other videos about the game, complaining montages and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's always surprising for me to be reminded that the rest of the world watches Game Informer stuff too. My question is, what is the most unexpected location you've ever seen Game Informer stuff?
Didn't it show up in an episode of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, in Silicon Valley, they had the Metal Gear Solid 5 issue, which is
on,
3 years
like,
old.
Counter. It was weird.
So we had Kumail come in here. He did some replay stuff for us, and that was a cool little callback. So, yeah, it was nice for him to recognize us.
And it was weird because you could see that, I forget if it was the cover. I think it was the cover in one episode. And then I think the next episode, it was like halfway through the magazine. Like each episode's like leafing through another page of the magazine. Well, isn't Game Informer in Reign Over Me?
Yeah, I mean, I
movie?
think we created a unique Shadow of the Colossus cover. We never did that as a standard cover, but we did a unique one for them. For Sandler, they requested that because it was going to be a scene in the game or in the movie where he's playing it with Don Cheadle.
Right.
And it was going to be like a strategy guide. So we kind of built out these pages and all that, and it was going to be in like on their coffee table or whatever. But the prop was never used properly in those sequences, and you can kind of see it, I think, on a chair or something in one of the shots.
Awesome.
But the weirdest one was
A horror movie.
Yeah, Stay Alive. We are like the twist ending. Game Informer's the twist ending of that
What?
movie. I won't reveal what it is.
No, absolutely, dude. No one gives a shit. What is it?
Okay, so there's this game that this company makes. It's like an MMO, and who's the kid from Malcolm in the Middle?
Frank Muniz.
Yeah, he's one of the guys in it, and they're playing this MMO, but it turns out you can get killed in this game, like really get killed, and it's like in beta testing or something like that. And so the whole thing is they're trying to figure out what's going on and then stop the madness from happening. They do all that. I'm really spoiling the whole movie.
Who cares?
But So you think, okay, this game's never going to be released, but the last shot of the movie is some kid going into a GameStop-like store, some game store, and he goes over the counter and he's just kind of talking, and then the camera kind of pans over and it's like Game Informer cover and Stay Alive's on it, and it's like coming soon or whatever, and it's like it's gonna come out. Yeah, that's exactly what
Credits.
it's like. Yeah,
That's so stupid.
that is pretty much
I had no idea.
exactly the last shot.
Oh my god.
Super dumb, but you should check it out. It's kind of a fun, dumb little horror movie.
Yeah.
It's not like it's
Definitely
better
check it
quality
out,
than
yeah.
like sci-fi horror and stuff like that.
Well, that's all you need in life. I'm totally with you.
But yeah, I don't know. We got a good laugh out of that. That was a fun one to do.
it always pops up in weird places. It's always flattering, like, you know, the No Man's Sky montages. I think we talked about last week even how weird it was, because I was watching those critiques on YouTube, and then it's like, oh, here's the sound of my voice from the podcast episode. Okay, that's bizarre. But it's fun to like trace stuff back in a more cryptic way. Like, I listen to a lot of gaming podcasts, and like one of my favorites a while ago, like 8-4 they're talking about Breath of the Wild's development, and they made a passing reference to like, oh, well, we know Monolith is working on that game and supporting it. And then like to trace it back in my mind of like, oh, that's because when Ben Reeves and I were sitting with Miyamoto, we asked him that specifically, and just seeing like the way news filters out through this chain. And when you know that you're at the start of that, Cover Story Trip's another good example, just little nuggets coming from that. That's always really fun.
My weird one is still Rainbow Six Vegas, or sorry, Patriots.
What was that?
So this is weird. So this, you know, we went up and did the story, and that was during the time of like Occupy and the Tea Party movement, and it was a really contentious political climate, unlike today.
Right.
But so the whole intro was about all this weird stuff that's going on in the United States, and there's just so much polarization between different sections of our society. And the game was all about like domestic terrorism. You played from the perspective of somebody who's a domestic terrorist. You played from Team Rainbow and the civilians caught in the middle of it. So really kind of bold game design decision, right?
Too bold, some would say.
Yeah. So some crazy dude who was in the military like read the magazine and read our cover story, and he would use the intro that I wrote for that story as a way to like see if other people were really pissed off at America. And he was recruiting people to become a domestic terrorism group. And he eventually like convinced this other guy, and he went and told his wife, and she's like, no, you're not. So he had to go back and say like, well, I'm not going to do this. He eventually, like, they killed him and they killed his wife. And we found out about this, like, I think it was like an Atlanta newscast where they're like holding up our magazine, and they're like, they use Game Informer to recruit for this dude.
It is bizarre.
Really bizarre story.
Jesus Christ.
So that's the weirdest place I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's probably up there.
Shut it down.
Yeah. You know, when I Google search for Miyamoto, sometimes I see pictures that I took of him. That's neat too. Anyways, Michael from Florida writes in. He says, please discuss the ridiculousness of the Xbox One Z. And then had a link to this thing that apparently, I think it was like Microsoft Australia or something, made a Microsoft Xbox One Z. What do you guys think of this?
I think it's been in development since the Snuggies were big. This is how long it takes to iterate a next-gen Snuggie.
Right, right. This is the future. Here's a couple features just to get the mind racing here. It has enlarged pockets to fit your Xbox One controller and media remotes, arm pouch to offer quick and easy access to your mobile phone during the boring parts of games, apparently, rollable legs and arms to cater for all temperatures, forearm grips to prevent slipping on those edge-of-your-seat moments, extra-large hood to accommodate headsets for the ultimate gaming experience, and customized gamer tag embroidery.
It's all I'm going to wear once it releases. Every episode of Replay.
While you're going Pokemon
Podcast,
going outside
I
in the
will be
park,
in
the mud, in the woods, wearing an Xbox onesie.
Yeah. That's going to be his like Jedi robe.
Seriously, that's all I'm going to wear.
Your
It comes
Kevin
in white,
Smith
right?
hockey jersey.
There's like white and black.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have both of them.
Does it have a colostomy bag? That's the one thing.
It is missing that. It's a good point.
It does look comfy.
Did they reveal a price for that?
It's $3,000. No, I have no idea. It's the price of the Scorpio. But, you know, gaming in a robe, underrated. So, not outrageous.
Right. You a boxer's robe guy?
Every once in a while.
Dude?
It's been years, I think, but there was a streak there where I wore a robe on weekends till around noon or so. It's a good time. I recommend it to everybody. Clinton Leonard says, hey, Ben, simple question. What are a couple of your favorite albums? 1 or 2 albums you love listening to and don't have to skip a track?
It's
That's
for
like
you,
a Pandora's
specifically
box,
for you.
man.
Yeah, only I'm allowed to answer this one.
Yeah.
For a long time, I think my favorite album, because I listened to it all the time when I was like the manager of like a family video store, is Go Team's Thunder Lightning Strike.
I remember Go Team.
Yeah, I remember
They had that video with. Were they the band that was like they had everyone was on treadmills?
No, that's okay. Go.
Okay,
Easily
Go.
confused.
Sorry,
They were the
yeah.
one that they were in like
Close.
Little Big Planet and stuff, but just like a good upbeat track. And then maybe like number 2 is like James Brown's Love, Power, Peace live album from the 70s. Another good time, don't skip a track album. What do you guys got?
I mean,
Ooh, wow.
I listen to Guns N' Roses a lot. So
Yeah.
Never
so-
would have guessed that.
Yeah, well,
Chinese democracy, right?
The best.
Appetite for Destruction is my go-to.
Yeah.
album.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a top to bottom amazing album.
Yeah,
I
it
don't-
is. I could listen to it all day, and I have.
You gonna go to the reunion, or are they done?
No, I think they're still playing.
Yeah.
They were just playing last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were in LA last week.
They're playing for like 2-hour sets. Like it sounds intense.
This sounds bizarre. I would have guessed you're just like a Wilco fan or something.
I mean,
If
I like
stereotype
Jack White
incorrectly?
too, and
Okay.
like
Stripes.
definitely, yeah. But I actually like Jack White solo stuff more than the Raconteurs and the White Stripes
Okay.
and Dead Weather and stuff. I do love the Dead Weather though.
Sure.
But yeah, and like Arctic Monkeys, their most I don't know if it's the most recent. The one right before AM. Yeah,
Okay.
it was like a couple years ago that came out. That is a fantastic album.
And Bertz, which Social Distortion album are you going with?
Oh, I'm not. I would probably go with Tom Waits, Rain Dogs. That's
All
right.
that's an album I can listen to forever, probably.
All
I
right.
think.
Reiner, Tripping Icarus?
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Dude, check them out if you haven't.
Overrated band. But, I mean, I would say Nirvana, In Utero, and then anything Jesus Lizard.
Sweet. Yeah.
Like-
What is Jesus
Goat?
Lizard?
Goat is so good.
So good.
What
Head
is this?
Pure.
No idea
Oh
what
man.
that is.
Me neither.
Shot.
Am I not cool? Is this old? Is this new?
That's they were a Matador band, right? Were they?
Yeah,
on
they were
Matador, or-
back. I mean, grunge era, but they weren't kind of grunge. They were kind of in between genres. They were amazing musicians, but the vocals take some getting used to. It takes some time, but once you really understand what they're about, they're phenomenal. One of the best
Understand
bands.
the true meaning of Jesus Lizard.
Yeah, so those
Huh.
are my two.
Nice.
But In Utero is such a classic. Like,
It
There we
is.
go. Can't say no. Brett says, hello, GI. After listening to your discussion of Kingsglaive on the last podcast, I have lost all interest in seeing the movie. More to the point, I've lost interest in all of Final Fantasy 15.
What have you done?
What I've heard of the story doesn't interest me. I'd hope the movie would draw me in. Does the storytelling in Kingsglaive give you pause for concern for the overall 15 story? Did you watch Kingsglaive yet?
Not yet.
Reiner? I know you said you were going to, or wanted to at a certain
Well,
point.
and then I heard your podcast, and I was like, I'm just done with video games.
It's the best Final Fantasy movie, but I remember
That's a really high bar.
I know. When Kim and Joe and I were talking about 15 way back during that cover story trip, this was a big point of discussion and contention. I remember at the end of that podcast about whether or not Kingsglaive would kind of set the tone. And if the story isn't great there, then it's kind of a hint of where the story and the tone of the story is going to be with 15. Yeah, I'm a little worried about 15's story.
Yeah, I'm too. The road trip angle is really weird to me. You know.
Yeah, especially just like the voices and the English localization specifically. Like I know even people on the development team, we talked about that a fair amount. It's just like, yeah, the characters work well in Japan, but like the people who could speak English as well, they're like, I don't know. Sometimes it's like, this is a different approach for the localization team than we expected. And every glimpse I've had of that, including like, I don't want to spoil anything in Kingsglaive, but there are the main characters from 15 at a certain point in that film. And just like that little scene, it made my skin crawl. Like, holy crap. I don't know if I can take these characters in the way they're talking. So it's cool that it's kind of a darker story.
Okay.
But I'm really worried about those characters and the personalities coming through with the localization. Hey, we'll see. On a lighter note,
November.
T-Van Cease from Arizona says, hey, GI, for many years you've run the Game & Farcer, the mock section of the magazine. What are some of the segments, features that have stuck out to you? Who is the artist that draws it? Lastly, have you considered doing a collector's version of the magazine with the best of the best Game & Farcers?
Oh, wow.
That'd
Yeah,
be
that's a
fun.
good
That
idea.
would be a
That'd be
really
cool.
good idea.
Xander Cannon is the artist. We've known him for a while. He's been doing it over a decade, I think.
Yeah.
Time flies. But he's an awesome artist. Kaiju Max, he has a comic he does about, it's like basically, giant monsters like Godzilla, like what if they were all like in a prison, like a maximum security prison kind
I
of
had
thing.
no idea. That sounds really fun.
It's good. It's really good, actually. And he does them in kind of short seasons. Definitely check that out. But, man, they're all so, well, there's a couple of years they weren't great. But a lot of them are really, really fun and good, and that's something I started with Jay Fitzloff.
What was the
former
origin
editor.
of that? How did that go?
Yeah, we were just like, let's do a fake kind of magazine, and he's like, go for it, and we're like, okay, here we go.
It was always in the April issue, though.
Yep, yeah, it was
Okay.
always April Fools, and just from there we just kept doing it and got better. More people, more staffers involved each time, and yeah, I think it's at a point now where it's almost like predicting what's happening.
Well, it does all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't there like a Wii DS and it was like a 2-screen? Or was it? What was that again?
Well, there was a Wii. I did one where the Wii, it was just a one button. It was just the do button. It was like simplified to that. And then we saw the Wii controller and just had the A button. I was like, oh! And then what else? Oh, one I really liked was EA taking microtransactions to the point of absurdity of like you had to buy air for your footballs in Madden.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think we're getting close to that one.
We're damn close. Yeah, I think the meetings are the things that stand out to me. It's really fun just to be like in those initial pitch meetings and then not see them again until it's in like the finished issue and seeing
Yeah.
like how the writers filled out those details. Because it always runs into that onion problem of like, headline's great. Now write a couple paragraphs about it,
how's
make
the
it funny.
execution? Yeah.
God, I remember one of them that made me laugh really hard is the dumbest joke. Well, a couple of them. There was Telltale's
Yeah, the Mad
Tales of
Libs.
Telltale's Tales of What's Eating Gilbert Grape. It was years and years ago. And then another one, I think Cork wrote it, but it was the launch of the Xbox One and talking about all the features it can do, but they never mentioned games. And then there's this quote from Don Matrick, like listing off, like, oh, we got Instagram, we got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got Pinterest. It can do all these things. And then just, the only joke in there really was that he lists Pinterest twice. And it's such like a weird, subtle Jeff Cork joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I should point out, Joe Juba has been spearheading it the last like 5-6 years, but it is a by committee kind of thing. Lots of ideas being thrown out. We bring in Xander early on, like we kind of figure out a cover idea, but we don't do all the jokes because Xander is really good at jokes as well. So we have him kind of being a part of that collaborative process. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And those meetings are some of the best meetings because it's just the ideas people throw out. And just like, there's moments where it's just duds, right? In the room where someone's like, throw something out like, what about this? And it's just crickets.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun.
That happens in our regular issue meetings.
Oh, yeah.
too.
All the time. Every time we talk to each other. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, somehow the ball started rolling on poop and fart puns over Nintendo titles.
That's right.
And it
That's right.
got relegated down to like this fine print at the bottom of Game Informer, I think. But we had like dozens and dozens and
Yep.
dozens of those, and it made us laugh so hard. And after we had exhausted every possible joke in there, then Tim just came up with lunch out, which is so stupid, but
Yeah.
it really made us laugh.
But anyway, the EIC is a real person. Like that's not
Darth
jokes
Clark?
at all.
Yeah,
Darth
no, that's
Clark is
legit.
totally real.
Hey, which one do you guys like for email of the week? For me, I think like the stress reliever, solid. The vault, solid.
The co-op thing was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the
Yeah.
best one, I think,
Co-op.
in terms of
Okay.
discussion.
All right. Co-op. Let's see if I can find this mysterious person they wrote about Gary Whitta. That is, well, I forget their name.
You have to read the pages.
I know.
It's-
Oh, that's David Wilson. Got it. Congratulations, David Wilson, Mr. Co-op. We'll send you out something real nice.
Yay.
It's going to be. Let's see. What is the prize this week? Just Reiner's eyebrows.
Sure. I
You
can
cool with that?
shave those off.
Okay.
Not much hair left, but I can take those.
But eyebrows grow back really quickly.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
worry about it. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. And thank you to everybody that wrote into podcast@gameinformer.com. Be sure to keep feedback coming in that avenue, and there's a chance you'll win Question of the Week. But for now, we're going to move on and talk to Kevin from Team 17 about the long British history of making jokes and strategic moves in Worms. So stay tuned for that. Kevin Carthew, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you are creative director of all of Team 17.
Yeah, well, it sounds like quite lofty statement when you put it like that, but yeah, I'm the creative director at Team 17. I've been here for quite a while now. I've been here for 18 years. Seen a lot of games come and go since then. Had a lot of input on a lot of different Worms titles. Yeah.
So 18 years, you've just been immersed in the world of Worms.
Something like that, yeah. So before I joined Team 17, it's important to say I was like a huge fan of Team 17. I don't think it was a machine that was so popular in the States. You guys know the Amiga home computer?
Yeah, vaguely. It's like Bigfoot for us, but yeah.
That rare, yeah. So Team 17 were like the developer back in the day of Amiga games. You know, they were like the premium AAA Amiga developer, and I was such a boring, huge Amiga nerd. I was such a staggering Amiga fanboy, and such a huge fan of the Worms games as well, that I like grew up with Team 17 games. And you know, it's an absolute dream come true to be able to work at Team 17, to eventually get a job at Team 17. You know, if you'd have asked my younger teenage self that this is one day what I'd be doing to make a living, you know, I would have taken your hand off, absolutely.
You guys are such an interesting studio. It's one of those things, we've just been around for so long, you kind of take it for granted. But you guys are an indie studio that have been around since 1990, fully independent, right? Like, there are very few other game studios, maybe. Can you think of other ones that have been around since before your time, around 1990, that are in a similar spot as you?
I can think of a lot of ones that aren't around anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I suppose it is a little bit of a privileged position to have been around for that length of time. I guess I put it down to a combination of hard work, owning the IP that we do with Worms, all the effort that we've put into sustaining that IP, keeping it relevant for all this time.
That's what I want to know. This is like a very, very long marriage. I want to know how you spice up a relationship after all these years. How the hell do you guys keep rolling with Worms and still find an audience there?
Well, if I knew how to spice up a marriage right, then I'd probably be doing something else. That would be the secret to everything. Keeping Worms relevant, I suppose it's a combination of things. We've got a great fan base for one thing, right? We've got a fantastic community. Very vocal fan base as well. We are very keen to take input from the fans. There are certain things about Worms that I think it's very difficult to sort of like put your finger on it being necessarily one thing, but there's an essential look and feel to Worms that when the hardcore fans of the game know that it's authentic, that's kind of like the test that we always have to pass with the game. You know, we've put a lot of time into making sure that WMD passes that test. And then over the years, it's been all sorts of experimentation with the core formula. It's been bringing it to new platforms, an awful lot of decisions that we've had to make over the years to make sure that people still get the game and people still enjoy the game.
You talk about like the look and feel, like Worms WMD stands out. It has, I don't know, a simplified art style, a really clean art style that I think works well. Like, what are some of the variants of the past that the audience has kind of revolted against as far as the look and feel of Worms?
I think the big one, the one that comes up time and again, is probably the 3D versions of the game.
Yeah.
So you've got to think back to like when Worms 3D launched and that time frame up until that point, and you know, around the time that Worms launched, that was about the time where 3D accelerated graphics were coming in, right? So you had the launch of consoles like the PlayStation, you had dedicated 3D hardware on the PC, and Worms launched at a time that kind of went against all that, and because it went against all that, a lot of people doubted its popularity or doubted its ability to succeed, but it succeeded against all the odds in a market that at the time looked very, very different. I guess there was always that clamour, and there was always people asking, you know, would this game translate to 3D? What would it look like in 3D? And it was a huge technical challenge for us at the time, not just a technical challenge, a design challenge as well. And I can remember so many people within the company were like against the idea. So many people didn't want to touch Worms in 3D. But I guess, you know, there's kind of like what publishers wanted to see, what the fans wanted to see at the time. Everybody was willing us to do it. And so we took that step. I mean, I've always been very happy with how the 3D versions of the games turned out. I thought we did a great job of them, but there are certain elements, certain aspects of the gameplay that just mean that it is that little bit better suited to a 2D experience than a 3D experience. Just by adding that extra dimension inherently adds lots of complexity to what is often seen as a kind of simple pick-up-and-play title on the surface of it.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about like the time frame of the first Worms when it came out. It like launched alongside Rayman on the PlayStation, stuff like that, and now Rayman went 3D. Then Rayman realized, I think we're better in cleaner 2D. Do you feel like Worms is stuck now as a 2D franchise? Do you think is there momentum in the studio to ever try and shift to 3D again?
Honestly, with WMD just having launched, we're really not thinking about it at the present time. We've really more than got our hands full making sure that the WMD launch goes smoothly. I mean, my personal feelings, and I think there's a lot of people out there that agree with me, you know, it absolutely is a 2D game. It's best suited as a 2D game. So no plans at the moment, but I guess you can never say never.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to know so it seems like Armageddon is like the go-to Worms game. Is that just the one that I love the most, or is that the one that the community is like, that is the king of all Worms?
It's between that and Worms World Party. But I mean, they're the same engine, right? So there's not an awful lot of difference between World Party and Armageddon. Feature set is slightly different, but yeah, and it's not just it absolutely is the consensus. If you were to do a straw poll of the community, everybody would be telling you Worms Armageddon.
Why that one? Why do you think that one broke through, or like was the cream of the crop for so long?
Again, I think it's one of those things that's really difficult to pin down. When you play Worms Armageddon, when you swing around on the ninja rope, when you see a grenade bouncing around, when you feel the weight of the worms jumping, everything about that game just feels right. Yeah, it feels precise and it feels very, very satisfying to play. In terms of the features, there are other Worms games that do more things than Worms Armageddon, but Worms Armageddon absolutely gets the basics right. And as a jumping off point for Worms WMD, we were always saying to ourselves, you know, the gauntlet laid down, the challenge for our dev team is to make the essential Worms experience. You know, we're not making another Worms game. We're making absolutely the best Worms game that we've ever made before. And we gave our coders a little bit of a headache, I think. But when we were talking about recreating that authenticity of Worms Armageddon, that essential look and feel of the Worms series, we didn't just play Worms Armageddon. We didn't just sit down and discuss it and say, you know, well, it's because the worm jumps exactly this amount of pixels. We literally dug out the old code and had the programmers pour through it and find out what it was exactly that made the game feel so good to play, feel so good in the hands. What was it that gave it that level of precision?
So when I think about your career, 18 years at Team 17, I just imagine 18 years filled with boardroom meetings about ninja rope physics. Is that about sum it up?
That's pretty much it, yeah. 365 days a year, day in, day out. Do you know what? You wouldn't be too far away with the previous game. The ninja rope was such an important thing to get right, and it was so important to have the ninja rope acting properly in Worms WMD. There were an awful amount of discussions that went on with that, and I've seen other games developers face the same challenges that we did. And if a games developer makes a game, a competitive multiplayer game, invariably, if you've got a big community that loves the game, eventually they will start doing things in the game that you had no idea it was even possible to do in the first place. You know, you didn't necessarily program in all these edge cases intentionally. It just so happened that way. And there are some pretty good ropers at Team 17, but nobody sort of like comes up to the scratch of what the community can do. So WMD now, it absolutely is in the hands of the community. The response and the feedback that we've had back so far has been pretty good.
Can you do?
Yeah.
I remember in playing a lot of Armageddon back in the day. It was on mouse and keyboard, and I played WMD on a controller, so maybe that's the difference. But Armageddon, and I'm sure this is this is a rookie comment for you, but like it had that great ability where ninja rope, you launch up, and if you're on a corner, then it would be a little bit buggy, a little bit janky. You get the like bouncing back and forth, and then extend.
Yep.
Can you still do that in WMD, or have you guys ruled that out?
So I think what you're talking about is firing the rope several times really quickly.
No, what I'm talking about is launching on a corner and then kind of flicking back and forth. And then when you're horizontal, then you extend the rope to go backwards and higher. Basically,
Yes,
how janky do you want the rope to be, I guess is the question.
So exactly like that, yes. I mean, but that's not anything that exists in real life. Yeah, there's no analogy for that kind of thing in real life.
I'd argue a worm with a gun is something.
It's called either the Indian rope trick or it's called poling. That's how it's referred to.
Okay.
Some versions of Worms have had a realistic physics simulation. You know, there is nothing realistic about how the classic ninja rope works. But yeah, what you're describing there, you absolutely can do in Worms WMD. If you try to do that same maneuver in some of the other Worms games, some of the previous Worms games, the rope would just collapse in on itself, right? Because it's realistic physics. It's like a real rope, but the ninja rope is, I don't know, there's nothing like it really. It's like some weird kind of like extending metal pole in one situation, and then it's more like a rope in other situations. Yeah,
people don't want realism when they're playing a Worms game. They want stuff like the OMG strike and just the most absurd weaponry possible in this game. So it seems to me like one of the biggest design hurdles that you've had to deal with for so many years is just navigating the space in Worms. Like with the ability to blow up the terrain, there's always little nuggets left over, or just a weird indent and crater that's really tough to get around. Do you want to talk about that challenge and how you guys have addressed that for so long?
We don't address it. Honest answer, it's part of the game. It's absolutely part of the game. And yes, some people it drives them absolutely bonkers. Other people accept it. I mean, for a long time there was a Worms fan site running called Blame the Pixel. It was blamethepixel.com. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, those tiny little fragments of land. We've had all sorts of discussions about this. We thought, should we clear them up? You know, if the landscape gets below a certain size, should we run some process on it so it cleans up all those untidy little edges? No, I'm afraid it's just part of the game, and it's an essential part of the strategy as well, it would seem.
What a strange thing. All right, I'm in love with communities that you don't think or never really think about, and I imagine the Worms community is passionate as hell. You've mentioned it before. But like, what is the most nitty-gritty issue that is a big discussion point in the Worms community?
Oh, gosh. There are several. So one would be exactly what we were just talking about, the essential feel of the ninja rope. There are always debates about how the worm should move, and particularly regarding how the worm should jump. So in Worms Armageddon, jumps are always fixed, right? It always jumps to fixed distance.
Right.
He backflips a fixed distance. For me, that feels very old-fashioned now. And in the more modern versions, and something we kept for Worms WMD, you can influence his jump a little bit, just a little bit, not a lot. If you jump and hold forwards, he will jump a little bit further. If you jump and hold away from the jump, he will jump a little bit shorter. If you just jump, he always jumps a fixed distance. So you can steer him a little bit. I just think it makes the game so much nicer to play. It makes the experience much smoother. And it's something that the purists and the hardcore in the community, I think some of them are dead against it. I think some of them are for it, some of them are dead against it. But I mean, for us, it's always about finding that balance between fan service, appeasing the community, you know, trying to bring as many players from the old games forward into the new games, but at the same time you always have that balance between fan service and trying to bring new players in as well, broadening the audience and appeal to as many players as possible.
Yeah. Is there a competitive scene for Worms? What's that like?
There's a competitive scene amongst the community. It has been at esports events before. I know that there have been small esports tournaments run around Worms Armageddon. The competitive scene in the community is just so interesting. A huge thing for them is customization. They run regularly things like, I think they call it the Worms Olympics, and that's not even necessarily about playing the game in a deathmatch mode per se. It's almost like gymnastics with the ninja rope, or gymnastics with the grenade. Who can make the precise shots, and they almost build their own rules and their own game modes for how the game should be played alongside the deathmatch game.
That's awesome. And like with the different terrain, it'd be tough to have a standard esports. It would vary so much. You need like the equivalent of like Final Destination in Smash Brothers or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good point. You absolutely can do it. I mean, the game experience is so customizable. You can turn off random crate drops. You can make sure that the landscape's always fixed by using the same seed. You can have fixed weapon sets, so on and so forth. So the game is so customizable and always has been so customizable that you absolutely can set up fair conditions. But there's always a slight unpredictability. You know, there's always the wind blowing. The wind could go for you or it could go against you.
Yeah. God, do you guys think you'd ever make a big push for esports, or do you guys have meetings around the office every once in a while? Like, maybe we can make this a real esports competitor if we took a certain angle in the future.
Sure, I mean, we've got no plans at the moment, but I was really happy to see one of the first user reviews that came out for Worms WMD. I think one of the first lines was something like, "This is the esports version of Worms," and that review is not saying that there are options to make Worms into an esport in Worms WMD, because there aren't. But it's just a comment more that this one feels right. There's some precision in this, and again, it comes back to that Worms Armageddon thing of everything feeling good and it feeling like an authentic Worms game.
Yeah. So, just the idea of keeping this franchise alive for so long. I was trying to think in a similar vein of you guys being an indie studio that's been around for so long. I was trying to think of like other franchises that have just hit on a core formula that's so good that you guys can look to as like a model for reinventing slightly but staying faithful. And it's like, there's like Tetris, Bomberman, even though that's kind of fallen off. Are there other franchises that you guys look to as models for like a classic, simple, arcadey formula that you have to keep rolling for so long?
Do you know what? It sounds ridiculous to say, but honestly, I don't think there are, and I don't think there are because Worms almost exists in a genre by itself. I mean, yeah, there are other artillery games. There are some other great artillery games out there. We've looked at other artillery games, but we've not necessarily looked at other models or other video games and seen how we can transpose it, because I just feel like Worms is so different to everything else out there, right? I mean, we might get some inspiration from the weapons that you see in other games or specific features from other games. You know, there are things in WMD that were inspired by things in other video games. You know, mounted guns, for example, in WMD absolutely comes from the mounted guns in the early Call of Duty games that we all used to play on the LAN together at Team 17. But with Worms, with the mechanics of Worms being quite dissimilar to everything else out there, there's not necessarily one game that we choose as a template. We're always considering what we'll do within the context of Worms and will it work for Worms and the gameplay dynamics.
So what is it? Is that original formula just so good that it can sustain itself for 20-some years?
It sounds quite blasé when you put it like that, but I don't know. Maybe it is. You know, the core formula it seems to me incredibly strong. You know, it almost seems indestructible, and there are definitely decisions that we've made in the past that work better in tandem with the core formula. But it feels like that those fundamentals there are so solid that it almost can withstand any amount of tinkering. The method that we adopted for Worms WMD is, harking back to the original game, is that we kind of like treated everything like a digital sandpit, if you like. You know, that there's not really a great deal of metagame to Worms WMD. There's not an awful lot of things that you do outside of the game in order to set up and start playing it. We wanted the game to feel very immediate, and so essentially we were treating it as putting new toys into the sandpit, new toys for the user to play with. If you see a mounted gun in the world, you can have a pretty good idea of how that works. You've seen that before, right? And you can think of how it applies to Worms. If you see vehicles in the game, helicopters, tanks, mech suits, you can have a pretty good idea of how all of those things work. And when you walk over to the vehicle, it flashes up on screen. This is the button that you press to enter the vehicle or leave the vehicle. Once you're inside the vehicle, the tank controls just like a worm. You know that a helicopter's going to fly. How do you fly in Worms on the jetpack? You push up. It all maps quite nicely to the original control scheme.
And the scary thing with the helicopter, too, is when you're just laying waste and flying above the terrain, and then you see the clock counting down, it gets down to 0. Like, the first time it was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I guess the helicopter just drops out of the sky, and I hope there's not water underneath. It's a scary feeling.
It goes.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And it happens so often as well. We're seeing so many of the early reviews saying, game's great, helicopter's really difficult to control, though. And it's intentionally difficult to control, right? Because being able to fly anywhere on the map with an unlimited amount of fuel is really, really powerful. And that's always been a huge part of Worms when people get it wrong, and what you're talking about, running out of time, thinking you've got enough retreat time to fly from this island to this island and not quite making it, and your time running out just as you're passing the water, and then really unsatisfactorily for you, but very satisfactorily for everybody watching, you just sink very, very slowly down the screen and end up in the drink at the bottom, and it's bye-bye to your world.
It's perfect. So you guys have had, the Worms franchise going on for so long. It's really interesting to me to have, variants, but a core idea that's always the same, and getting to test that in different markets. Going on mobile, you guys had a Facebook Worms, testing out like the Xbox Live Arcade market. Was there a certain combination that you think worked really well for a marketplace and Worms? Like, where do you feel like there was lightning striking?
That's a really interesting observation, actually. So if you look at the first mobile version of Worms, it's almost exactly the console version of Worms. Worms was incredibly successful on Xbox Live Arcade. It came out at a time where in Xbox Live Arcade, games were much more simpler than they are now. Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network, these digital platforms are now just marketplaces. But when these digital platforms first emerged, it was assumed that the titles that worked best on them were simple games, incredibly simple games like Feeding Frenzy or, ports of old arcade games. And Worms seemed to fit quite nicely into that category. So the first Xbox Live Arcade version of Worms was the handheld version, and then the handheld version went directly onto the phone version as well. But while it was still a great game, it wasn't necessarily designed for handhelds. And so I guess as the handheld market expanded, you saw more and more complex games on there. We started making the decision to design for the platform. So now when you play the mobile version of Worms, it is absolutely designed for a mobile platform. The complexity's been toned down a little bit. It's still absolutely Worms. It still contains all the strategy, and it's still recognizably Worms. But certain decisions have been made to make sure that the control scheme works best with Worms. You can't steer the jumps in the mobile versions, for example, because it's a little bit less precise than using a keyboard or a controller. We've absolutely designed for platforms in the past.
Yeah. With different platforms in the past too, did you guys have publishers for Worms games, or has Team 17 always published your own?
No, we've had publishers for Worms games. I think the very first version of Worms wasn't published by Team 17. It wasn't self-published. Team 17 as a company, we've always had a mixture of self-publishing, working with publishers, and also publishing games ourselves. We've always, throughout, on and off, helped bring other people's games to market.
Yeah. So what has that process been like? Are you guys publishing more and more as you go on, or do you feel like, because even looking into your history, I didn't even realize that you guys published the original Super Stardust way back in the day. Like, you've been publishing games for a long time.
Yeah. So Super Stardust would have been one of the games we published, one of the first games that we published. I guess, back in late 2013, I think it was, our managing director, Debbie Bestwick, she's very interested in the commercial side of the business. She's very interested in helping bring other people's games to market as well. And we made, I guess, a decision in earnest to get more involved with that side of things. We thought that it was a great fit for what we've been doing all these years. We've got a big history as a developer. We know an awful lot about different platforms and how to best bring other games to market. We've done it all throughout the years that we've been active as a business. And so this was a side of Team 17 that we wanted to bring back. And like I say, we've been doing it since late 2013. I think it's fair to say that we've made quite a good success of it. We've got some great games on the games label, and I think as well we've got a slightly different perspective on games publishing as compared to other publishers because we've seen that other side of it, right? Because we've been publishers ourselves. We've been a game developer all these years since 1990. We've helped bring other people's games to market on the past, so we know an awful lot about the business, and I think, like I say, we can add something to the publishing business. We can give something a little bit different. We can perhaps give something that traditional publishers can't.
Yeah, so what is the role of traditional publishers as you see it in 2016? Would you ever need to go back to them?
Do we ever need to go back to traditional publishers? I don't think they've ever really gone away. I think there'll always be a place for that. Why wouldn't there be a place for that? I mean, the side of marketing a game, bringing a game to market, doing the community management, doing the PR, all of that is so different and so complex compared to just building a game by yourself. Indie developers, the guy who comes straight out of university, makes a great game and has a huge hit. Building a game is so different from the business of bringing a game to market and getting the word out there too.
So do you think Team 17 is just going to publish their own stuff into the future, or do you feel like you as a developer would ever need that strong arm of marketing?
Well, we have all of that within the operation ourselves. We have 2 offices now. We have a game developer side of things. We have a publishing side of things as well. We have an entire team that does life cycle management, PR, marketing, community management. That is all part of what Team 17 does in 2016, and we have been doing for years now.
Yeah. God, and you guys have cranked out some good stuff. Like, people are excited about Yooka-Laylee. You guys did Overcooked, right?
Yeah, fantastic game, unbelievable couch co-op multiplayer game. Great response, great reviews coming in. Fantastic to see it doing well, made by a couple of great guys. That was a personal favourite within the offices. When we first saw that game, not a lot of work got done for a couple of days. We're just having a blast with that, and we've helped bring that game to market for those guys. It's been a success so far, and that's what the publishing side of the business is all about.
You want to talk about the British gaming development scene? It seems like you guys are steering a little bit more in that direction. Is just such a tight community that British developers are going to think of coming to Team 17 as a publisher?
I hope that it's not just British developers. I hope that it seems like we're making a little bit of a name for ourselves. As you know, the indie community is kind of like tight-knit in pockets. We know developers who know one another. I think word of mouth spreads like that. I hope that it's not just British developers, but developers all around the world come to Team 17 for what it is that we can offer.
What do you think about the health of the British game development scene these days?
What do I think about the health of it?
Yeah.
I think it seems to be in rude health. So ourselves as an example, I think we've just launched the best version of Worms that we've ever made before. You're probably familiar and you've seen a lot of what's going on with Yooka-Laylee. Looks like an incredible title. Things seem to be on the up and up for the British game development scene.
My dream, and this is just to be nerdy, is doing research on Team 17. Originally, the studio was called 17-bit, right?
Kind of. So before Team 17, we were shareware or a public domain library. Well, it's not quite right to say that we were. There was another business called 17-bit Software, where some of the original staff members from 17-bit went on to found Team 17. Do you know what a public domain library is? Are you familiar with shareware?
Loosely, I guess. I don't know how you make money off it.
So kind of the days before the internet, right? Before it was easy to distribute files, you would have public domain libraries or shareware libraries, literally a dark room with banks of glowing monitors, tons of floppy disks, and a catalogue of all sorts of things, demonstrations. They'd make a copy for you, you take it home, give it a play, and that's how software used to be distributed. And the name 17-bit was because the popular games machines and consoles at the time were 16-bit, right? So it's a dreadful pun. It was that bit better than the rest, and 17-bit went on to become Team 17.
And now you realize that there is a game development studio now out of Japan called 17-bit. They made like Skulls of the Shogun and Galaxy.
Yeah, there is as well, isn't there? Yeah, that's a fact that I keep forgetting. I remember seeing Skulls of the Shogun and playing it and thinking, hang on a minute, this name seems familiar.
But please, in the future, if Team 17 could publish a 17-bit game, it'd be this great union of the worlds, I feel like.
Like we'd come full circle, right?
You really would. So you've been there for 18 years. What was the craziest time you can remember? Was there a game development period that's really the highlight, that's like a legend within the studio of like, man, I can't believe we got that out the door?
Wow. That's putting me on the spot a bit. WMD's been quite tough development, great development as well, but it's been tough in the closing stages.
What makes it tough?
I think what makes it tough is people always underestimate the complexity of a Worms game, right? And I think part of the reason why they underestimate the complexity is because of its roots. Okay, so the first version of Worms, quite a simple game. Or simple on the surface, but its history, as you know, Worms is the archetypal classic indie game. It was developed by one guy in his bedroom at the time, and he developed it as an excuse not to do his maths A-level homework or something to just amuse his friends. And it grew into what it's grown into now, this huge British video gaming success story. But over the years, all the time we're developing Worms, we're adding complexity to it. The games are growing in the feature set. And the Worm now is, he's quite a complex character in video games. He has an awful lot of things that he has to interact with. All of those weapons, all of those things that happen in the game environment, all within a fully per pixel destructible terrain. So the tree of possibilities of things that can happen in a Worms game, it's not a narrow tree, it's a vast tree, it's a massive tree, and all those interactions have to be looked after, and not only looked after in a single player environment, they have to be looked after in a fully networked online 6-player experience where there are 48 Worms on the landscape and a possibility of 80 weapons, and now it's not just Worms playing against each other, you've thrown buildings, vehicles, mounted guns into the equation. So we often say deceptively simple, but Worms is pick up and play. People can have a good time with it without necessarily having to know the finer details. But what keeps people coming back to it is the depth in strategy. You don't look at it and think that's a hardcore strategy game, but it absolutely is. It just presents itself as this game about flatulent exploding sheep and exploding little old ladies and holy hand grenades and concrete donkeys that fall from the sky and blast through the landscape. But underneath all that is an incredibly competitive experience where the deep thinking and the strategy all of those underlying mechanics absolutely play a part in whether you're successful or whether you're unsuccessful.
Yeah. How do you keep the studio motivated? And, you hear about people working on Call of Duty series for 8 years and getting burned out and franchise fatigue. How much do you worry about that? How do you keep the team motivated?
Honestly, it's not an issue keeping the team motivated. I think people must think that 18 years this guy's been working on Worms games all his life. But that was an absolute dream for me. As I said before, I joined Team 17. It was a dream to be joining Team 17. It's still a dream come true to be here. We've got a number of members of staff who are in the same situation as me. We've even got a couple of guys, you probably won't believe me when I say it, but we've even got a couple of guys who've been here a little bit longer than I have. So some of us have grown up together, and we've worked hard together, and we've formed friendships together. And Worms is as I've already alluded to, is a great British success story. It's been around a long time. It's got a hardcore fan base. When you're working with something like that, keeping people motivated it's not a problem at all. People are happy and excited to be working on Worms, and we're always excited to be working on the next Worms game as well.
And there's always an audience funneling money into Team 17 for those Worms games.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're always doing something new with it, right? So WMD has a wealth of features, a wealth of things that have never been seen in a Worms game before, and all implemented in a way that I don't think it steps on the toes of the core concepts. If anything, I think it improves the core concept.
So you guys have worked so hard on the Worms series and Worms WMD. I'm wondering if there's anything else recently that Team 17 has done, or things in your past that you think the team's really proud of, that you want to call out, like other projects?
Sure. I mean, so one thing that we do as a games label, as a publisher, that I think is really interesting is that we're not just about deadlines or working with other people, or saying you as a developer deliver this, we'll stick it on a store for you, we'll market it, we'll promote it for you. So we sometimes co-develop with these guys as well. So good examples recently. We helped bring Escapist to console, and we were involved in a little bit of the design decisions that were made in the Escapist as well. I'm not claiming credit for the Escapist. The Escapist is absolutely Chris Davis's baby. It's his game. But I think Chris himself was acknowledged that Team 17 played a significant part in some of the decisions that formed the Escapist and went on to make the Escapist the success it has been. Other games like Sheltered as well. We co-developed Sheltered with the guys, so it's not just a case of Sonny and Dean working on the game in isolation. They came into our offices. They worked with our development team. There's a significant part of Team 17 in some of these indie games that we're also helping bring to market. And when I'm talking about, Team 17 have a different take on publishing, or have a different take on our games label, that is also a big part of what we do. That as a developer, we can also offer to help co-develop these games. We can help with game design, we can help with technical issues, we can help with art direction. Is also a big part of what we do as a games label.
Nice. And so the future of Team 17 involves more publishing, more Worms. Is there motivation for more new IP coming out of the development side?
We're always looking at new IP. We've got so many ideas on the boil. So many things happen within the studio that the wider public don't necessarily see or don't make it out there. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. But it wasn't too long ago that we were making Alien Breed, for example, with the Unreal Engine, the Alien Breed series. A couple of years ago, we released a puzzle game which was okay. It was kind of set in the Worms universe, but we made a puzzle game called Flockers. So I think there's this perception that as a studio, that it's nothing but Worms. But if you look at the games that we've released in our track record, it's actually, it doesn't tell the entire story. We are most famous for Worms, but we absolutely develop other games at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, to close it out, I'm wondering what anomalies have occurred in the Worms series. Like, apparently you guys were going to make a version for the Virtual Boy way back in the day. And I'm wondering, like, what is the strangest thing in Worms' history that people would be surprised to learn? Like, have you guys ever sold crazy merchandise of like a life-size worm or anything like that? There's got to be some weird thing in the annals of history with Team 17.
If you talk about merchandise, if you were to visit our offices, the first thing that you would see in the stairwell downstairs, you would see a life-size worm. Okay, so that is the worm suit, and I think, thankfully for me, I'm not the tallest guy, but I think I'm a little bit too tall to don the worm suit at shows. And I've seen what happens to people when they come out of the worm suit. When you go to E3 or Gamescom and you are the poor unfortunate soul tasked with donning the worm suit and going for a walk, I've seen people almost die in that worm suit. It's that serious. Interesting you should mention the Virtual Boy, because I actually got blamed for the Virtual Boy dev kit going missing. So we did look at developing a Worms game for the Virtual Boy. I remember for the longest time walking into the warehouse where we kept all the old consoles and all the old game machines, and for the longest time you knew where the Virtual Boy was, and I think one day it just disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if somebody nicked it, but that was pinned on me for a little while. Somebody was saying, "You're a big Nintendo fan. Have you got the Virtual Boy? Did you sell the Virtual Boy on eBay?" And it was like, no, of course I didn't sell the Virtual Boy on eBay. I wouldn't do that. I do love games, and I like Nintendo games and Nintendo memorabilia, but no, you can't pin that one on me. No, not guilty, I'm afraid.
So this is like before the Virtual Boy came out?
This was after the Virtual Boy came out. I'm talking in recent living memory. We still had a Virtual Boy dev kit knocking around somewhere at the studio.
Oh, wow. What does the dev kit look like?
This is probably about 5 years ago or something.
What does the actual dev kit look like for the Virtual Boy?
It just looks like a Virtual Boy.
Oh, man. The mind is racing. The imagination is soaring.
The possibilities, right?
What makes you such a Nintendo fan?
I'm a fan of gaming in general. I grew up at the same time that I grew up with my Amiga. I was a huge Team 17 fan. I guess the Amiga allowed you to do a little bit more. You could do a little bit of graphic design and programming. But, I always had a Game Boy. I always had a SNES. So it's just the stuff that I grew up with. And, obviously they make fantastic games, right?
Yeah. So it must be a real thrill whenever you get to work with them, like Open Warfare on the DS. Was that published by Nintendo then?
No, it wasn't published by Nintendo. Who was the publisher? I think the publisher was THQ. I think the publisher was THQ.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Fantastic working with the hardware. Yeah, whenever you get the dev kits in. I mean, we made a version of Worms for the Wii, and for the longest time we were trying to solve problems such as throwing grenades with a gesture on, so on and so forth. We had so many prototypes where throwing the grenade was literally just a flick of the wrist instead of using a power bar. Surprisingly hard to get that stuff right, but really good fun to try.
Do you ever get any feedback from Miyamoto on the Worms series? Does he ever check out any of your games at E3 or anything?
Oh heck no. I don't. No, we've never had anything from Miyamoto on the Worms series. I'd like to see what he had to say, but nothing so far.
I'll get Worms on the NX. Maybe he'd, swing by the booth at a certain point.
All right, yeah, I'll get right on it after this.
Well, no, Kevin, congratulations on Worms WMD. I played just a little bit last night and seems super solid. It's going to be a go-to party game for sure.
No, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to hear it.
Yeah, thanks again. And thank you for your time. And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next week and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.